The UK has announced its biggest trade deal since Brexit.
Good morning. Thank you for your company. It's 6 o'clock on Friday, the 31st of March. You're watching and listening to Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Isabel.
These are your top stories this morning, and Britain has signed a deal to join a major Indo-Pacific trade bloc stretching from Canada to Australia. The Prime Minister says it puts the UK in a prime position and will lead to a £1.8 billion boost to the economy.
Donald Trump's been indicted on criminal charges relating to an alleged hush money payment to an adult film actress. He is the first former US president to face criminal charges in court.
And are you planning an Easter getaway? Well, you might want to check that your flight hasn't been cancelled yet, because the strikes are back, but this time it's security staff at Heathrow who are going to walk out over the next 10 days.
And as ever, we love to hear from you throughout the programme. Do send in your thoughts. Email us gbnews@gbnews.uk.
Now it's Britain's biggest trade deal since leaving the EU.
Yes, the UK has agreed to join the Indo-Pacific trading bloc known as the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership.
It's catchy, isn't it?
It's a tongue twister.
Very catchy. Now, the government says joining the group will boost UK exports by cutting tariffs on things like cheese, cars and whiskey.
Well, joining us for more is the former Special Advisor to Nadhim Zahawi, Mark Lehane. Good morning to you, Mark. Look, this is something for the government to celebrate, the biggest trade deal then post-Brexit.
It really is good news for everybody for, I think, three main reasons. First of all, it's going to open up trade for British companies to lots of other countries around the world. Importantly, lots of fast-growing countries around the world. It's also going to make it easier for British consumers, people like you and me, to buy stuff from those countries more cheaply and more easily. So that's got to be a good thing. The other reason why it's a really great move is this is a proper free trade area. It doesn't have all the political connotations that we had with the European Union. There's not a political court at the top of it to try and enforce countries to be similar other than when they're trading with one another. So I think it's a really good move.
Where does it leave us in terms of our relationship with the EU and trading with them in terms of, I mean, we know they don't like it when we set up our own deals?
Well, listen, I mean, every country should be free to do what they think and what their voters think is right for them. So it looks like the CPTPP, I've got to get that right. It looks like that's the deal that we're going to be doing. That's going to be opening up trade for a whole load of other countries that account for, I think, around about 500 million people. So it's a bloc that's slightly bigger than the European Union was. And in terms of how the European Union feel about it, it does mean that we couldn't go back into the customs union with the European Union, which is what we know some people wanted us to do. So the European Union will have to get used to it. They themselves would, I think, probably like to do a trade deal with the CPTPP at some point. So we may yet find ourselves sat around the table with them in the near future, but this time as equals rather than a member.
OK, so I was going to go through the list of countries involved. We've got sort of old friends, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, big trading nations like Japan, Mexico, Vietnam, and then some other sort of smaller countries in terms of their sort of trading capabilities, Chile, Peru, Brunei, Malaysia and Singapore. I mean, we do have trade deals individually with a lot of those countries. So how does this work in a kind of more of a bloc, you know, sort of setting? And what are we giving them? What are we getting in return?
So what it should mean is that we're trading with all of those countries now in a very similar way. So rather than having a trade deal with some and not with others, we should be moving to a much more level playing field with them in that regard. But also, more importantly, this is a relatively new trade bloc. It's only been around for a few years. It's hoping to grow. So the great thing about us getting in now is that we will be at the table as a member when that trade bloc grows. So we will have a say on what other countries join, and we can try and ensure that that level playing field stays in place as other countries come in. And so this is also part of us pivoting to not just have a focus with our neighbours in Europe, which is still very important, but also pivoting to towards the Far East, where lots of growth is going on. I think, like I said, over 50% of forecast economic growth should be coming from these countries that we're joining up with.
Well, which would be very positive because we need it to grow, don't we? I mean, £1.8 billion, the PM says this is going to be worth to us. That's not a lot of money in the great scheme of things, sadly.
No, it isn't, but it's a start, and the whole point is how this impacts over the medium to long term. So, like I said, it's going to make it easier for UK businesses, in particular small and medium businesses, to sell their goods overseas, and it'll be good for the British consumer because it'll be easier for us to buy goods back over here. So 1.8 billion in the shorter run, but over time, as those other countries that are in the group grow, will benefit, but also as CPTPP itself grows, there'll be even more countries that we can trade with more freely and hopefully generate even more economic wealth.
What about jobs? Do we expect to see it help create jobs here in the UK?
Well, one would expect so, because normally the more trade there is, the more wealth there is, and therefore the more jobs that come with it, either through greater opportunities overseas or from consumers in the UK being able to save money on goods that we're already buying or being able to buy more goods elsewhere, and hence we can spend that money elsewhere. Again, it's one of those things, with the thing about trade is, often you can see the downsides to it because people can see if they've lost a job or if they've lost out to a competitor, but you can't always see directly what the benefits are. But we just know that free trade is one of the greatest things we've discovered as humans to improve our wealth and improve our lot over time.
Can we just ask you, because we do, I don't know if you're aware, we do a GB News People's Poll every week, and in our People's Poll, what is coming in is quite interesting. I think the key point is Keir Starmer is preferred over Rishi Sunak to address crime and antisocial behaviour. Now, of course, antisocial behaviour has been part of the government agenda in the last week, but it's meant to be traditionally the Conservatives are meant to be the ones who people look to on law and order. The fact that this is shifting a little bit is a concern, isn't it, for the government?
This will be a big concern for the government, in particular for Rishi Sunak, who is projecting an image of a man who can get stuff done and whose priorities are the same as the man and woman on the streets priorities. Now, listen, normally, as you said, law and order is an issue which the Conservatives lead over Labour. Keir Starmer's done a really, really good job in the last 18 months of getting back to basics, as it were, and focusing on issues which he knows the swing voter really cares about. Antisocial behaviour, law and order are really, really important. And the fact that this poll suggests that he has a lead over Rishi Sunak on those issues is really, sorry, my phone's about to drop, is really, really important. So all that Rishi Sunak can do is to focus on the details, double down on this issue and try and make sure that we can really make a difference that people on the street can see.
OK.
Of course, people on the street will be able to have their say soon, going to the ballot box in the council elections very soon. Labour launching their local election campaign yesterday. And interesting, that gap between Labour and the Conservatives is narrowing. Labour's lead now down to 18 points. Is that where the Conservative Party wants to be, though, at this stage in the electoral cycle, do you think?
Obviously, any government would like to be in the lead in the opinion polls at any point. But what I think is really interesting is that since the start of the year, we have started to see the polls narrowing so that Labour aren't quite so far in the lead. And the key thing for the Prime Minister to do now is to keep on focusing on those issues. So he's made a big thing about the small votes. He's managed to pull off an incredible Windsor framework, which not everyone is happy with, but hopefully takes the heat out of the issues with the European Union. He's now moving on to a trade deal, and now hopefully they can have something that will really make a difference with antisocial behaviour that people will see.
Mark Lehane, you're a brilliant analyst. Really appreciated what you had to say. You're a rubbish cameraman, so stick to the day. Stick to the day job. Really good to see you this morning. Thanks very much indeed.
See you again.
Right, the time, 8 minutes past 6. Let's bring you up to date with what else is happening today. And overnight, Donald Trump has been indicted by a grand jury in New York, making him the first former United States president to face criminal charges. It's after an investigation into alleged hush money payments given to the adult film star Stormy Daniels during his 2016 election campaign. Trump says he's the most innocent man in US history. It comes just days after he launched his 2024 Republican nomination campaign in Texas.
A damning report into values and culture at fire and rescue services in England has found racist, sexist and homophobic behaviour going on unchallenged. Examples include humiliating new recruits, acting out rape, expecting women to make tea and dismissing racist language as banter. His Majesty's Inspector of Fire and Rescue says the deeply troubling findings are shocking and appalling.
The actress Gwyneth Paltrow has won a US lawsuit after being sued by a retired doctor over a 2016 ski crash in Utah. Jurors found the Oscar winner was not at fault for the collision, which left Dr. Terry Sanderson with broken ribs and head injuries. Ms. Paltrow, who denied the claim, has been awarded compensatory damages of $1.
Now, a 34-year-old drug dealer who fatally shot and killed 9-year-old Olivia Pratt-Korbel has been found guilty of murder at Manchester Crown Court.
Yes, Thomas Cashman, who admitted being a high-level cannabis dealer in Liverpool, will be sentenced on Monday following an 18-day trial.
Well, let's go live now to youth mentor Mark Bracewell, who can talk about his experience as a former gang member. Mark, it's good to see you this morning. I mean, it's hugely disturbing when we get the lid lifted, when we get a little bit of an insight about what a drug world, a drug life actually looks like and the implications it has.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, especially with what I teach the youngsters that we work with, that on the outside it looks glamorous and it looks like a life that some people might want to live, but ultimately it's a life where people's lives are at risk and people go to extreme lengths to defend what they've got, and it's just not worth it.
It's quite shocking to me looking through the papers. Some have made the conscious decision to lead with the sweet face of Olivia on the front of them. Others have gone with the picture of the perpetrator himself. But inside the papers, and you're talking about the glamorisation of this world, is this highly polished, almost like a footballer's wife, who is the partner of Cashman. And she was in there in court, staying loyal to the man who's now been convicted of murder. And I do wonder, you know, what kind of message does that send out, you know, the glamorisation of this lifestyle to people who are sort of aspiring perhaps to be like this?
Yes, I mean, what we're seeing, especially with the youngsters that we work with, a lot of the youngsters that follow this life and obviously see the glamour of it are coming from places that they don't have much and they see it as a way out. But ultimately, like I say, it doesn't end well. It doesn't end well for anybody. It doesn't end well for the people involved. And it doesn't end well for innocent parties that get caught up in the crossfire.
Why is it? I mean, from the young people that you are working with, and from your own experience, why is it that there is an appeal for the gang culture, for a gang lifestyle? I mean, is it just because it seems glamorous, or are they trying to escape something in everyday life?
I mean, I can only answer for myself and how that was for myself when I was growing up. And for me, it was an escape it was a way to get out of where I grew up and the things that I was surrounded by. I mean, I didn't walk outside my house every day and see lawyers, doctors and nurses and things like that. I walked out of my house every day and seeing people struggling. The one thing I'm not doing is condoning and saying it's okay, because it's not, it's wrong, and ultimately it's breaking the law and it's committing a crime. But it is easy for youngsters to get involved and getting trapped in things like that because they don't see any other options, you know, and until we give people different options, they're always going to take the easy way out, unfortunately, and that's what they see it as.
I was just going to say, I mean, you make the point, you're not condoning the behaviour because it is illegal, which is a fair point. However, if we don't understand why people get into it, we can never tackle it, can we?
No, we can't, and that's the truth of it. And the thing is, it's a lot deeper than just one individual. It's something that stems deep into our communities and in our society, that these people would actually go and take the risks that they take, and ultimately put other people's lives in danger while doing so. And I think, like I said, until we find the root cause of it, it's not going to stop anytime soon.
Mark, tell us about life inside the kind of world of drugs and gangs in terms of pressure not to own up to crimes that you've been involved in, because, you know, key part of this story was the ex-partner of Cashman who decided to come forward. She just decided there is no such thing as a grass when it comes to the murder of an innocent 9-year-old child. And she's now having to go into witness protection because her life is in jeopardy. But she believed at the heart of this was right and wrong. How hard was it for her, do you think, to stand up and do that? What kind of threats and pressure do you think she would have been under? And is there a message of hope in there as well?
Yeah, I think it's extremely hard. I think, first of all, we've got to give her the the thanks and gratitude that it deserves, that she did the right thing and she came forward and obviously brought a killer to justice, because ultimately that's what he was. It is hard, especially in these tight communities, to speak out against people that commit offences, because as you can see, this person went to extreme lengths to try and kill somebody and ended up killing somebody else, killing an innocent person. And obviously people who have the information that we need to bring these people to justice are scared, and they don't feel protected, and that's why so many people do not come forward, you know. So it's about putting in place and installing in people from a young age, like we speak to our youngsters and we tell them it's okay to speak out. The person that speaks out is the person that we should be commending and we should be putting on a pedestal, because ultimately they're doing the right thing, and we just need to install it into the communities that speaking out is the right thing, because we need it to end, and that's the only way it's going to stop, is by us coming together and speaking out.
Well, what turned things around for you, Mark?
For me, I guess it was just I actually realised that I had a purpose in life and that I was meant for more, you know, and the lie that I was being told all my life, that I was never going to amount to anything or be anything because of the area I was from and because of the people that I was surrounded by, just wasn't true, you know. And I guess I just realised that like I say, I had a purpose and I could actually do good rather than bad.
Yeah, well, you absolutely are. You're very impressive, and we salute you for all that you are doing. Mark Bracewell, youth mentor, speaking to us this morning from Stoke-on-Trent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you know, and I think it's very important to get the message out from people who've been there and done it and actually seen the light, as it were. Yeah,
you can have a life, and actually, if you do step forward, as Cashman's ex did, the authorities will protect you. She's going into witness protection, and, you know, it's invaluable, those kind of people.
But it's going to be, you know, we do need to salute her because, I mean, witness protection is one thing, but that's going to be a hard life.
Yeah, she'll always be looking over her shoulder.
Always.
100%. And did you see his sister's reaction in court yesterday? She had to be virtually carried out of the courtroom. She was shouting obscenities at the media. It's rough, it's dangerous, and it was incredibly brave of her.
Now, on a lighter note, well, it's meant to be a lighter note, isn't it, when you think about going on holiday and things? It's getting to that point of year when people are looking online, thinking,
Kids
where could I go?
Today.
Oh, do they?
Yeah, all the state schools are finishing sort of 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock this afternoon.
Oh,
so
dear.
Holidays are here.
I'm sorry.
I know. Brace yourself.
But anyway, 10 days of strikes are going to go ahead from today.
Timed that, haven't
At
they?
Heathrow, they certainly have, after last-ditch talks failed to resolve a dispute over pay.
Well, over 1,400 security guards from the Unite Union will walk out, leaving many flights set to be cancelled. Well,
What's it going to mean if you're planning to travel on with those Easter holiday plans? Let's talk to travel guru, the Independent's travel correspondent, Simon Calder. Morning to you, Simon. As always, I've got to ask, where are you this week?
I'm at Heathrow Airport, Stephen.
Oh, that's not very glamorous.
Blustery old morning. Well, no, but it's quite appropriate given that behind me at Terminal 5 is where the strike is taking effect, just over here. Now, look, if you are not flying from Terminal 5 at Heathrow, you do not need to worry about the security strikes. However, if you are on British Airways, the only airline at that airport terminal, then I'm afraid there have been more cancellations overnight. What we've seen is British Airways actually putting in over 70 cancellations. We knew there were going to be 32 ahead of this strike, basically to reduce the pressure on the security search area. BA have put in more cancellations. That might be because of the foul weather, might be because of French air traffic controllers. But I've been across to the terminal and it's really interesting. On the passenger departure level, everything is calm. There's hundreds of people in smart polo tops who are there to help, say their shirts, and they are helping passengers, mostly preparing them for security, getting them through, and making sure they haven't got bottles of water, telling that they've got to get their laptops, iPads and so on out, and that they've got to have all their toiletries in those familiar bags, and of course nothing over 100 millilitres. So that bit's going smoothly. What didn't seem to be going so smoothly, I'm afraid, was what was happening on the arrivals level, which is where an awful lot of airside staff go through security. They, of course, have to be checked just as closely as passengers, and that's normally a fairly straightforward matter, but I saw a queue, hundreds of people snaking pretty much the length of this very long terminal, and I fear that there could be problems later if people can't get where they are supposed to be. Heathrow says, we're very sorry that United decided to go ahead on strikes with this strike. Of course, as you say, talks broke down last night trying to find a solution. They've put lots of contingencies in place. British Airways will be cancelling flights throughout the 10 days, but it's going to be this weekend where we really see how much disruption this is causing. The union says they have no doubt this will cause long delays and disruption, and of course, exactly as you were saying, at the point where families are thinking, at last we can get away on a great escape. Well, at Heathrow it's going to be a bit tricky, I'm afraid.
Yeah, lovely Easter news. Simon, thank you.
Oh, it's very depressing. Mind you, it's not as bad as it could have been.
Yeah, it could have been a lot worse.
If it's only Terminal 5 at Heathrow, so it's only British Airways flights, and it's not all of them.
Yeah, and they're drafting in all these extra staff, and they've got people in smart polo shirts, as Simon
Well,
was
there you
saying,
go.
here to help. So
What-
everything's going to be OK.
What more could you want? What more but for the vast majority of people who are flying out of other airports up and down the country, you'll be all right.
So jealous. Wouldn't that be
Oh, you
lovely?
do fancy?
I do fancy a little trip to a beach somewhere. It'd be lovely.
Yeah, it would be nice. The weather's been so miserable.
I know.
Fed up with it.
Hey, maybe you're off on your holes. Let us know if you're going somewhere lovely. We'd love to hear.
We would. GB Views at gbnews.uk. And coming up, a blast from the past. We're going to talk to the man who brought Tetris to the world.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Right, the time is 6:24. You're watching and listening to Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Isabel. Still to come.
Well, care home workers in Lincolnshire are protesting plans to cut down the number of care-providing companies. We'll get the latest from our reporter.
And as the first portrait of King Charles since he became monarch is revealed, we'll be speaking with the painter himself. It's fabulous. I love it.
It's one of those skills I wish I had.
Yeah.
I'm not remotely
but
artistic.
sometimes I don't like them. Sometimes I think they look a bit formal, or perhaps they look a bit austere. He looks really like a sort of sweet grandpa in that picture.
Yeah.
The nation's grandfather.
Let's have a look at it again.
Do you know what I mean? It just it's very sort of friendly.
Yeah, it is friendly.
And actually, I do love a navy suit on a man.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yes. So we'll get all the details. Oh, yeah, you and the king.
Thank you. Oh, my tie's gone a bit
Very
skewy,
regal, very regal. Let us know what you think. Send in your thoughts, gbnews@gbnews.uk. So crossing borders, dodging authorities and doing dodgy deals might sound a bit like the plot of a spy thriller, but in actual fact, it is the real-life story of the man who brought Tetris to the world.
Tetris?
I was going to say that, did you?
Tetris?
Yeah.
I mean, the adventure behind one of the world's best-known video games has now been made into a feature film starring, of all people, the fantastic Taron Egerton as game designer Henk Rogers.
And I'm pleased to say we can actually speak to the real Henk Rogers himself. He joins us now from across the pond in New York. Look, a very busy day for you, and we're thrilled you found the time to talk to us. And look, we grew up in the generation of Tetris, didn't we?
Absolutely.
And I just can't believe that the story behind it. I had absolutely no idea. So tell us about the fantastical story of Tetris and how it came to be.
Well, you know, I was in a publisher in Japan at the time, and I had published Tetris on 7 different platforms, including Nintendo. And Game Boy came out, and this was the opportunity. Game Boy is the perfect machine for Tetris, and Tetris is the perfect game for Game Boy. So I went to the US and met with Mr. Arakawa, the president of Nintendo, and made a deal. And pretty soon after that, I got on a plane with a tourist visa and went to the Soviet Union to find Tetris.
So, so it was invented by somebody else, was it then, in Russia? But it was a case of how do you get it from what it was there to actually get it to a worldwide audience?
Exactly. Tetris was invented by Alexei Pajitnov, a Russian mathematician, and the rights had somehow left the Soviet Union, but definitely at the time the Game Boy rights, or the handheld rights, had not left. And I was trying to work through, an agent to try to get the rights, and it just didn't work out. So I ended up going myself, and that was an adventure for me because I'd never been to a communist country before. I was certainly breaking the law by going into a ministry and meeting with people because, at that time, it's just like going into North Korea today and trying to meet with people in a ministry. You're not supposed to meet those people. And so I didn't know what trouble I could be in, but it was the time of perestroika and glasnost. So it wasn't as tough as it would have been, a few years earlier.
So this was 1988, and as I say, you've turned this into a movie with Apple and managed to get Taron Egerton to play you, who, of course, people will know from Elton John and Eddie the Eagle. And I believe we have a little clip which we can take a look at now.
Tetris?
Tetris.
Tetris. Tetris.
Tetris.
It's the perfect game. It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. I played for 5 minutes. I still see falling blocks in my dreams. It's poetry, art, and math all working in magical synchronicity. It's the perfect game. Tetris?
Tetris.
Tetris. Tetris.
Tetris. I don't get it.
Some people never did get it. What's it like to see your life being portrayed that way on the silver screen?
This game isn't just
a bit of out-of-body experience.
With you.
I look at Taron. He's like an amazing actor. He doesn't look anything like me, but hey, you know what? I'd rather have a good actor than a lookalike.
It doesn't look as cool as you, but I have to agree. I do think it is the perfect game. And anyone who watches GB News regularly will know I'm not actually a big fan of computer games. But I don't know if it's because I'm a bit OCD or I like tidiness, but I really enjoy Tetris. There's something about it. So I'm really looking forward to seeing this on the big screen. And
yeah.
I believe, actually, at one stage, apart from the sort of drama and jeopardy of trying to get the rights out from behind the Iron Curtain, you'd even had to put your house on the line at one point. Tell us about that.
Yes, so I was, when I went to the Soviet Union, by the way, it was 1989. And when I went to the Soviet Union, I had 200,000 cartridges in manufacture. And to be able to manufacture those cartridges, I had to borrow money. So I used my in-laws' land as collateral. I mean, these are people who made their money, and making dumplings, that kind of thing. And it was all on the line. And when I got to Moscow, Mr. Belikov, the character that I was dealing with, the first thing he said is, "We never gave these rights to anyone." Oh, you have no idea how much stress that was.
Oh my gosh, I can imagine.
I'll tell you what, Hank, it's one of those things, though, with all of this. If someone came to you or came to anybody with a film plot, you'd say no.
You couldn't make it up, could you?
Couldn't, no one would believe it. Isn't it weird how real life is stranger than fiction?
Absolutely. I mean, these conditions, that existed in the Soviet Union, they're hard to imagine for people who've never been to a place like that. And to have an adventure in a place, it's kind of like a little bit of a spy story, because I didn't know whether I was going to end up in a gulag or whether I was going to end up with some kind of rights to Tetris. It all worked out.
Well, I hope you paid your in-laws back and that it was all worth it in the end.
Yeah, I'll tell you what's going to be the key. I'll tell you what's going to be the key line from the movie, as Taron so brilliantly did there. It's the perfect game. Did you really say that?
I didn't necessarily say it.
Oh, come on. But it's not true.
It's not true. That's right.
So to speak.
Fabulous.
Hank, it's really good to see you this morning. Thank you ever so much for talking to us today.
You're very welcome.
You see, I think they should have made Taron Egerton look like Hank, because Hank looks incredibly cool.
Well, I bet they didn't look that dissimilar, all those years ago. I was a bit surprised. 1988. I thought it was around before then. Yeah. Because I was 14.
I was 6.
Oh, yeah, all right.
Well, not far behind you, but I did absolutely love. I do think it was the perfect game. I don't think they've improved on it since.
And it was one of those games you could get on the first very basic mobiles and things. You had Snake and Tetris.
Yeah.
And Game Boy and all that.
Those were the days. Bring those back.
Well, they are back.
Needed. Are they? I'm going to get one.
Are you?
Yeah, why not?
But wow, to talk to the man who was behind, bringing us Tetris, it's weird, isn't it?
Very cool.
There you go. Anyway, I was never very good at it. Like, I can't do a Rubik's Cube either.
I would die quite quickly, but I would still enjoy it. When it gets to the top, you're going, oh, gosh, your thumbs couldn't move quickly enough. Send us your Tetris stories. Help us reminisce this morning. Yeah, if you're a Tetris genius, if you've got an impressive high score. Oh, I should have asked Hank what his high score was. But he's good at it. Well, maybe not. No. Well, you never know. Not. Anyway, look. Is Hank still there? Is it? Go on, what's your high score, Hank?
Well, there's high scores, and then on the Game Boy, when you accomplish something, a little rocket comes out, and each time you go to a higher level, a bigger rocket comes out, and in the end, the space shuttle comes out, which is the end of the game, basically. And I've managed to do that many times, so I guess I'm a little above average Tetris player. Yeah, let me ask you, because our gallery team was saying, we've got the rockets to come out. Did you ever get a space shuttle gallery team? Yes. Our director says yes. I don't know if I believe him, to be perfectly honest, but there you go.
Fabulous, Hank. Thank you.
All right, we've got much more to come, including all the news and views from this morning's papers.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things. We've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit off.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, The People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
At 6:35, good morning to you watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Isabel, and thank you for getting in touch this morning. I've just got to start with it's about the Heathrow strikes, but it's more about Simon Calder from Carol. Morning, Carol. I love Simon's adventures. He's always somewhere. Not very glamorous this morning. Our very own Phileas Fogg.
True.
Honestly, it's just like...
We'll call him Phileas from now on.
Every time we speak to him, he's in a different country normally. But Carol says, gracious me, poor folk who have cancelled flights. It's relentless and has been for the last 3 years. I'm surprised airlines are all still in the sector.
Also, we've been talking about Olivia Pratt-Corbell and the conviction yesterday of her murderer, and Nada has been in touch. We were just talking to a youth mentor a few moments ago, weren't we, Stephen? And she said, we grew up with nothing, yet we did not turn to criminality as an excuse. They do have alternatives, education that can get them a career. Is that too hard to actually work for something? And I do think that's a point, isn't it? Sometimes people say we had nothing else and use that as an excuse, but you don't have to go down the road of drugs and...
Well, you don't, and I'm sort of tempted to agree with that, but then because that's what I did. I had a job and all this, but I grew up in the Lake District, you know, and I just think if you're growing up in a city where the gang culture is already there, it must be so much easier to slide into it.
It's like Mark said, he walked out the door and he didn't have nurses, doctors, lawyers. He had criminal gang members driving around in flash cars that were sort of threatening. So you can see how it happens, but anyway.
So it's a fair point, Nad. I just think some people, it's the circumstances they're in. But anyway, let's have a look at the papers for you this morning. Shall we start with the Express? Yes, it says justice for Olivia. The 9-year-old's killer, Thomas Cashman, has been convicted.
The Times reports workers are facing a rapid rise in retirement age under a proposed pensions cap.
The Eye says pensions will be a sting in the tail as people in their 40s might have to work until they're 70.
Oh, that's something to be cheerful about this morning. And The Guardian leading with tax and price rises, claiming families will be almost £700 a year worse off. There we go.
The Daily Star, ladies and gentlemen, says artificially intelligent chatbots, well, there's no such thing as AI at the minute, just to clarify that, are going to take over the world, but are befuddled by Wordle.
Well done, Wordle.
Well, I mean, what's the point of that? It just baffles me. I have no idea.
Right, let's start, Sean, shall we? Donald Trump, big story overnight. So probably most of the printed editions don't have this story, but online, The Independent talking about he's expected to surrender in days after being indicted on more than 30 charges.
Yeah, do you know, I thought about explaining this story in a very matter-of-fact news-type way, but I would like to just present it as it is. The former or twice impeached president of the US is basically going to be up in court for hush money payments that he made to a porn star. Way back to try and cover up an affair. There has been a hell of a lot of chaos with Trump attacking the New York District Attorney Alvin Bragg. He was actually seen pictured holding a baseball bat, ready to strike to Bragg's head, something which his advisors called ill-advised. I think that's a bit of an understatement. It looks as if he's going to be going up in front of a grand jury in New York, which is just
The problem is,
astounding.
he says it's politically motivated, right? And because the way the system works on the court system at this level in the United States, these are political appointments, and this is someone who spent a long time sued President Trump several times and failed, hasn't he? This district attorney, and so. You can understand why people say, well, this is just trying to stop him getting the nomination.
No, I can't understand that, because I think anyone with any sort of keen eye or sort of basic understanding of this guy's tenure as president and his behaviour and his conduct before then isn't surprised. I'm not surprised that it's very easy for him to whip up sort of hysteria amongst his what I would call cerebrally challenged supporters, as we've seen down in Waco in Texas. I think I can definitely understand how he's managed to whip them up into a frenzy.
You know, somebody who's not cerebrally challenged, as you put it, is Elon Musk. And he's come out and said, if he gets indicted, which he has, this will be an absolute vote winner for President Trump. This will actually make all of his base outraged at what they perceive to be a politically motivated indictment, and he could not only get the nomination off the back of it, but could end up being the first US president to have been convicted of a crime. And I believe there's even talk, Liz, of some people online talking about, could he become president from within prison?
Yeah. Before we dismiss his fan base, I've spent time in the United States with friends, and they're a very diverse. The Trump supporters are a very diverse group. Don't write them off as rednecks with guns in the swamps of Louisiana or Texas. I know a very respectable couple in their early 80s that I met on the Queen Mary crossing, transatlantic crossing. They're absolutely loaded. They used to work for IBM. He invented something which we all use today. I can't say that because that identifies him, but they live quietly in their beautiful, huge mansion, and they're lovely people.
But they like Trump.
They like Trump. I've also got a friend who moved from the UK and has lived in New York for 25 years, and she don't say anything to support Trump because your bosses monitor it. They monitor you. People monitor your social media. So she's secretly Trump support, and she's very reasonable. That's not like.
Hold on a minute. There was an attempted insurrection with people storming the Capitol, and to present then Trump supporters as some sort of poor us, we dare not speak out is just
no. That's not what I was saying. I was saying they're not all Louisiana swamp people.
I didn't say they were.
Can I speak, Sean? I'm saying it's a very diverse group. So if you're asking me, could he get elected from prison? My answer is yes, because there's a silent group that would support him.
Do you not?
Can I also look back in history and say, Trump, so he got to put somebody's knickers and he paid them off so they wouldn't say so. What's the difference between him? Well, I'll tell you the difference. It's actually that the media now is vocal, as it is in this country, about politicians and their private lives, where in the past they weren't. It was a closed shop.
No,
so in the past we've had Kennedy.
He had it down as a tax write-off.
We've had Clinton.
Yeah, but with all of this, it's not what he did in that sense.
I'm not defending him. I'm just saying, let's not be hysterical.
No, but it's not. He's not been indicted for if he had that affair or for paying off. It's how that was then disguised in business accounts.
I just would also just like to add that I find it quite significant that on one side of the Atlantic we had somebody who said, let's drain the swamp. And on the other side of the Atlantic, we had somebody who's Boris Johnson, who's completely not your archetypal politician. And in both cases, they have been deposed, or they could be permanently removed from political circles, not by the electorate, but by...
Trump was. He lost the election.
Yeah, but you're right. But by a campaign, a concerted campaign against them
as a result of their own criminality and bad behaviour.
Right, OK. Well,
I think there's not going to be...
Show me a politician that's absolutely squeaky. I just think it's too easy to go, Trump.
The highest office in the world who is disguising payments to cover up an affair as sort of tax relief for however he's done it. And to say that this is because they behave the way in which all of us do is just nonsense, especially when you're at the very top of office in your country.
It's how he's allegedly done it, Sean.
Allegedly is the key word there. Doing some heavy lifting.
He's not been convicted of anything as yet. Let's look at The Guardian, Liz. A wave of rising bills and tax rises due to come in next week. It's going to leave us 700 quid worse off every year.
I don't know where they get that figure of 700 quid. I think it's a lot more than that. And it's huge already. I just had a gas bill for £950.
All right.
Oh, gosh.
I've taken photos of the meters and I'm querying it because I can't see what's been going on.
Done it.
No.
Well, just wait. We see the Telegraph yesterday. People on gas are going to be penalised even more with the new net zero plan.
Yeah.
So watch out, people on gas meters.
Yeah, especially if you live in a high-rise flat, how are you going to have a heat pump in your window box? Anyway, it's not just gas, is it? It's everything. I mean, The Guardian says council tax will go up for the first time above £2,000. Well, mine is the house I pay council tax on is a 3-bedroom bungalow, so it might be band E, but I already pay £2,750 in Kent. Yeah. Depends where you live. And then just things like a jar of coffee, which not long ago, you know, every supermarket had them on the shelf, end of the aisle, didn't they, for a £5, whatever brand it was, and it's now £8. Well, last time I looked, where coffee comes from, would not be affected directly by any war in Ukraine. You know, the costs of gas or electricity or... There was a report, actually, to the EU Commission that retailers are profiteering, you know, on the basis of everybody's expecting prices to go up. So it's like, oh, yeah, it's the cost of living crisis. We've had to put a jar of Nescafe up from £5 to £8. Fish and chips in a fish and chip shop's over £10 now. Yeah. So they say £700 a year. You really have to think about how you spend... I'm now to be found at the end of the bread section. You know, they reduce it. But there's nothing wrong with it. It's squashy and it's still... It might go out of life that day, but, you know...
Put it in the freezer.
Yeah, I've got a freezer full of bread now.
Well,
Probably costing me a fortune to keep it frozen.
Probably is. Sean, in The Times, let's have a look at graduates who are going to have to work for longer to allow people who haven't been to university to retire earlier, so it says.
Yeah, this is after an official review by Baroness Neville Rolfe, Conservative peer and Cabinet Office Minister. She's recommended the further increase to 68 for retirement between 41 and 2043. I will recognise and acknowledge my own sort of inverted snobbery. When I saw her title, I thought, oh, yeah, what does this person know about the sort of trials and tribulations of your ordinary working man? But she has taken into account people who have more taxing, physically laborious jobs and what you would place very often at the lower end of the sort of pay grade, and said that they should maybe be exempt from that. This is what I call, in politics anyway, an unenviable position between a rock and a hard place. You know, we do have to sort of stem spiralling costs. People are living longer, which is a very positive thing, but that is within its financial ramifications for the country.
But you know who is living longer, Sean, is the people who've got those university degrees. The manual workers do die younger. So they're working till 70, they draw their pension for a short while, and then they unfortunately...
Exactly.
So I think this is probably pretty fair.
Yeah, I think it's fair. It's a very difficult one, though, because how do you square that circle to tell someone who... I mean, these people work hard as well, you know, people
but too many people go to university. Maybe it'll deter some people from going to uni.
Yeah, but God, I mean, I don't even want to try and get into that debate and start telling people maybe you shouldn't consider it. I take your point. It's it's very much a rock and hard place. But...
It's very hard to work out what to do. I mean, I'm a northerner, therefore a big saver, because it's just what you do. You just save. Well,
I'm a southerner and I'm a saver as well. Yeah, I'm cautious.
I'm more north than you, and I struggle to save. So please teach me.
Come on, it's very important to save.
Haphazard.
But even with my pension plans, everything's geared.
Plural.
I've got it all geared up, right? So I know when I can retire and all the rest of it. But my money runs out when I'm 90.
Really?
Right.
So if I live longer than 90, I've had it.
Well, I got all my ducks in a row to be able to retire at 62.
Yeah.
So I can't wait till I'm that age.
What's gone wrong, Liz?
Well, I'm just, basically, I can take care of myself. So I'm fortunate there. I mean, it's the same with the arguments in France. The French are saying it's OK, if you've sat behind a desk all your life. Actually, sedentary work really can be bad for you. Yeah. But, if you've been grafting since you were 16 on a building site, hovering bricks, you're going to be probably in a different state. The thing with state pensions in France and in the UK is it's a big con, because people think that they're paying their national insurance, that it goes into a pot to pay for pensions and social security and the NHS, and it doesn't. It's just a second income tax. And people say, I've paid in all my life, So I started working in 1978, so I think, I've paid in all those years, but it's not been saved up for me.
No.
The money that I will be able to claim next year, when I reach 66 as a state pensioner, my son and my two sons and their wives and girlfriends, they're working now to pay me. Yeah. There isn't a pot of money, and our own UK state pension scheme is a time bomb. Just waiting to explode. Yeah. And that's why they want to put it up to, 68 as soon as possible. But they're politically squirming now because they know how unpopular it's going to be.
Well, it is. It is. We need to leave it there. Liz, Sean, thank you. We'll catch up with you a little bit later on. Now, let's tell you about care workers in Lincolnshire, because they say they fear for patient safety and their jobs if a plan to cut home care providers from 70 to just 4 goes ahead.
Yeah, the small care companies losing contracts say the decision to take away NHS patients could actually force them to close their doors.
Now, Lincolnshire's Integrated Care Board said the move will create a consistent standard of quality. Carers are protesting about that, and our East Midlands reporter Will Hollis has the latest.
Choice in care, choice in care, choice in care.
Care workers soon to be without anyone to care for. New NHS home care contracts in Lincolnshire cut out small businesses in favour of just 4 companies. Outside management offices in Sleaford, carers like Esme say their jobs and patients are at risk.
The people we have now, we will lose. They will be sent to this new provider. We've had years with them.
The NHS currently use around 70 smaller care providers across the whole of Lincolnshire. New contracts don't include them. Some of Esme's patients at Lincolnshire Home Care need mental health support. She's concerned for their future if they're taken away.
They've built up such a rapport with their regular support workers, and, we feel we know them inside out. They talk to us when they're having issues. Same as end-of-life care, we've at the most saddest time in people's lives, we're providing care, and they're just going to be pulled away from us.
Stop their contract.
Lincolnshire Integrated Care Board says it advertised the new continuing healthcare contracts and sent emails to existing providers. Paddy says her team at Honeycomb Care didn't get anything. She thinks the change will push even more carers out of the industry at a time when it's already short-staffed.
We have some amazing carers. It would be a massive shame for the system to lose good carers when we're already struggling to find carers. It's going to have a massive impact on the health and social care sector in Lincolnshire, because where are they going to find these carers from? They're going to have a lot of contracts to fill, they're going to need a lot of staff, and they're not going to have them.
In a statement, Lincolnshire Integrated Care Board said the aim of the procurement was to improve responsiveness for requests for home care, to have consistent standard of quality, and to build a foundation to create improvements in the domiciliary workforce.
In care, choice in care.
While contracts start on April 1st, the ICB says they'll be phased in. Esme says that she won't give up.
This is people's lives they're playing with. It's not fun and games. We're in this job because we care. We don't do it for money, but our jobs are also at risk.
Will Hollis, GB News in Sleaford.
I just want to bring you a bit of romance this morning because we're talking about the airstrikes and all the rest of it and planning for your holidays. Tony, morning Tony, who's, I think, a romantic, because he says, for our 30th wedding anniversary and my wife's 50th birthday, we've booked to go to Peru, Ecuador and the Galapagos Islands. We are concerned about the strikes, but we're not going from Terminal 5, so we should be OK. But feel for those who have their holidays disrupted or cancelled. And that's going to cost a packet, that, but it's two very special occasions.
I went to Ecuador. I worked in an AIDS orphanage there for a few months, and I travelled around, and it was absolutely amazing. So you'll have a fabulous time. I didn't make it to the Galapagos, and I always regret that.
Galapagos, because that's meant to be phenomenal,
yeah, but
isn't
it's a really expensive little flight. You have to get an extra little bolt on, and yeah, if you get there, I'm so jealous. It's one of the most amazing places in the world.
Wow. Wow. And John's off to Italy on Monday for the 4th time, going to the River Po to try to catch a £100-plus catfish.
What?
He's had a few at £80, but I won't stop until I get over £100. Love the show and watch every morning.
Oh,
thanks, John.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Tony. Happy wedding anniversary as well.
Oh, yeah, that's very romantic. I love a bit of that. Look, we've got much more to come, including more on that big trade deal that the UK struck.
Hello there. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Metaverse. I'm Jonathan Vaughtry. It is certainly a windy start to Friday for southern coast of England and Wales. That's due to low pressure that has been tracking its way through overnight, and this squeeze in the isobars here is really providing gales severe for a time. We could see gusts of 60, maybe up to 70 miles per hour through this early part of the morning. But underneath the main low pressure centre, winds are much lighter across many other areas of the UK. This is being accompanied by rain, certainly some persistent rain across areas of the southwest, particularly Devon and Cornwall, 15 to 25 millimetres building up, and there is a rain warning in force. Other areas of showery rain and drizzle persisting in many other locations, particularly across eastern coastal areas, as we see cloud pushing its way in from the North Sea. And where that cloud really persists, we can see some sea fog and temperatures not climbing much higher than 9 degrees Celsius. But a little brighter for western Scotland, and that's where we could see temperatures climb to around 15 degrees in Oban. As we move throughout to the overnight period, there's this trailing band of rain that's going to be persistent across, again, southwestern areas of England, Wales and up into Northern Ireland. That's going to linger throughout much of the night and will remain in place as you wake up on Saturday morning as well. The cloud, pretty much persistent for many of us, but that will hold temperatures up a fair amount. Just some of those clearer spells across Scotland may see temperatures drop down into mid or low single figures. Saturday then looks like a pretty cloudy one for many of us, still with this band of rain in the west, but further patches of drizzle pushing into eastern coastal areas as well. Best of the brightness, northwest England up into western areas of Scotland, where we could see a few brighter, sunnier spells in there. Temperatures around, if not slightly below average for the time of year. Again, highs between 9, maybe 14 degrees Celsius in places. High pressure looks to build as we move into Sunday, and so that's certainly looking to be the better half of the weekend. We just need to watch out for if that will stick around into the new working week or if other fronts will make their way in. Bye-bye.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison? I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The UK has announced its biggest trade deal since Brexit.
Good morning to you. It's 7 o'clock. It's Friday, the 31st of March. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Isabel. These are your top stories.
Britain has signed a deal to join a major Indo-Pacific trade bloc stretching from Canada to Australia. The Prime Minister says it puts the UK in a prime position and will lead to a £1.8 billion boost to the economy.
Donald Trump has been indicted on criminal charges relating to an alleged hush money payment to an adult film actress. He's the first former US president to face criminal charges in court.
And the first portrait of King Charles since he took the throne has been revealed. We'll meet the painter behind the image.
That's very good. It really captures him, I think. I'd like a portrait done.
Have you not had one? Eamon was saying yesterday he had 3 or 4. I thought to myself, I don't have any. Yeah. Well, maybe we'll get a viewer to send one in.
No comment.
I'm sure there's a few aspiring portrait artists out there.
Yeah, maybe. If you want to have a go, GB Views at gbnews.uk.
So good morning to you. It is our top story today. It's Britain's biggest trade deal since leaving the European Union.
Yes, the UK has agreed to join, that's all very catchy, the Indo-Pacific Trading Bloc, which is known... Here we go. Which is known as the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership.
Yeah, it's catchy. Well, look, the government says that joining the group will boost UK exports by cutting tariffs on goods such as cheese, cars and whiskey.
Let's talk to our political reporter, Olivia Utley, who's here to clarify all of this. So what does all this mean, Olivia, and how important is it?
So it's pretty important. We've joined this trade bloc, essentially, and once Britain joins this bloc, it's going to be worth, the whole bloc's going to be worth 15% of global GDP, which leapfrogs the EU. And what it means for small businesses, for anyone trading in the UK, is that on 99% of goods exported from the UK to any of these 11 countries, there will be 0 tariffs, so no tax. It'll smooth trading out, basically.
Cheapen goods a little bit.
Cheapen goods a little bit, exactly. This bloc is all about making traders as frictionless as possible. It's not a politicised bloc, it's simply a trade bloc, so it's different from the EU. I mean, critics say that the UK already has trade partnerships with almost all of these countries, with the exception of Brunei and Malaysia, which are smaller countries in this group. And some of those are carried over from our time in the EU. And of course, it's not set to be worth very much to the UK in pure numeric terms. So over the next 10 years, it's thought it's going to be worth 0.08%. That said, the fact that this bloc is now leapfrogging the EU is going to concern the EU. It also is a clear sign that Britain is not going to rejoin the single market at any point. We are now part of this bloc. We have gone in a different direction. The other thing to consider is the soft power that it gives us. Obviously, there is a global concern that China is rising in power and that it has a lot of influence across this region of countries, the Indo-Pacific countries. And having Britain in this trading bloc makes that easier, sort of mitigates that rise of Chinese power. So it's good news for Britain on a lot of fronts, really.
And is it correct that the European Union actually would quite like to be part of this CPTPP themselves?
Well, yes, that's what's being said. Obviously, the European Union has, with 27 countries all having to trade together, everything is a slow process. And as Rishi Sunak has made clear, what is so good about us, one of the huge dividends of Brexit is that we are able to move quickly on things like this. So we chose to join this partnership, and we are now part of this partnership, and it doesn't have to go through 27 different regulatory autonomies.
Is this the beginning of the ball rolling? Because, I mean, it's the biggest trade deal since Brexit. I mean, there've been other things announced, but is this the beginning of some momentum now where we can actually start to feel like a sovereign country getting on with it?
It feels like it is. I mean, I saw Kemi Badenoch, the Trade Secretary, posting yesterday saying here she was up at 1 a.m. with all of these trading partners, making this deal, signing on the dotted line. And it did feel sort of exciting, as though Britain is sort of going places and leaving our EU roots behind us. I mean, the fact that it is responsible for so little growth in numeric terms, I can't be glossed over, of course. But I think the most interesting thing, perhaps, is the fact that it does block us off from rejoining the single market. And I think there is a concern among Brexiteers that should there be a Labour government in 2 years' time, Keir Starmer is was a Remainer, campaign for rejoin, he could plan to sort of throw out Brexit altogether in time. This makes that a lot harder and just does take the UK in a very different direction.
Does it make it a lot harder? I mean, we could, in theory, leave, could we not? Leave this bloc if the Labour government did decide they wanted to go down that avenue of rejoining the EU. I suppose the question is, you know, we've seen how hard it's been to extricate ourselves from the EU. Will there be similar problems if at some point a future administration doesn't want to be part of this bloc anymore?
Well, it certainly wouldn't be impossible to leave this bloc. And as I say, this bloc is much less sort of politicised than the EU. It's not kind of trying to bring together all countries in any form of group of nation states. It's simply a trading bloc. That said, it would be difficult to get out of a trading bloc that we've just joined, and Keir Starmer or any future Labour Prime Minister would have to make a very robust case for wanting to leave this bloc, which is massively growing in influence and is now responsible for 15% of GDP. So if Keir Starmer wanted to make the argument as Prime Minister that, look, Brexit has given us no dividends, why don't we just go back into the EU? That argument is now much harder to make.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. Talking of Keir Starmer, in our People's poll this week, 28% of people say Keir Starmer is the best person to address crime and antisocial behaviour, compared to 16% for Rishi Sunak. I'm a little bit surprised that that's such a big gap.
I'm surprised about that too, because what we've seen in recent weeks in polling is that the gap between Labour and the Conservatives, obviously Labour is far ahead of the Conservatives in the polls, but week by week we're seeing that gap shrinking. And at the same time, what we're seeing is the gap between Keir Starmer's popularity ratings and Rishi Sunak's popularity ratings is shrinking at really quite a fast pace. There's not much in it. But on this issue of crime, there is a huge gap, whether that's simply because people feel as though things can't really be worse than they are at the moment. We know that trust in the Met Police is just an all-time low. Only 10% of people trust the Met Police. We had that shocking report, the Casey report, out last week showing all of the Met Police's failings. There's a big problem, and we know it's a huge issue in the country with people not liking very short sentences for violent criminals and people being let out of prison after serving much less than half their sentence. So this could simply be a reflection of we hate the status quo rather than huge faith in Keir Starmer to tackle the criminal problems facing Britain.
Another question that we put to the people in our People's poll was about second jobs. Of course, this is the week that Kwasi Kwarteng, Matt Hancock and even Sir Graham Brady fell down a bit of a sting, an undercover sting, didn't they, from a fake company where they didn't ask too many due diligence questions. So we've been asking whether or not MPs should be allowed to have second jobs. 60% saying MPs should be banned from having them. 12% of the public say they should be allowed to continue to have second jobs. Of course, there are many MPs that have more than just two. I think Dominic Raab was accusing David Lammy this week of having more than 40 different separate revenue streams.
Yes, so, I mean, we normally see stats somewhere around this region on the question of MPs having second jobs. Normally, this is higher than I've seen before, which is probably a reflection of the cost of living crisis. People simply feel that, you know, if you're earning however much an MP earns now, I think it's £86,000 a year, then you don't really need a second job. I think when you look into a breakdown of what MPs' jobs are, then you get slightly different responses. So there's a Conservative MP, for example, who is a nurse 3 days a week. That probably has more support than, for example, anything that Kwasi Kwarteng might be doing in the financial world. So, yeah, it's a sort of split opinion. But I think why we're seeing such high figures against second jobs here is to do with the cost of living crisis.
Yeah. It's that one rule for them, one rule for us, isn't it, a little bit, so it would seem. Olivia, thank you very much indeed. If you've got thoughts on that. The problem is, it is a complex issue, isn't it? It's. I mean, we've got MPs working here.
Yes, and, you know, I do think...
we can't... I think that's the elephant in the room, you can't avoid it. But doing this sort of job... Is that different to Kwasi Kwarteng saying, oh, well, I'll advise your company for £10,000 a day?
And also, I do think there is a perspective gained from working outside of the very privileged world of being an MP, you know, real life, effectively. And, you know, some people are career politicians these days. They have no experience of real life, and then they're making decisions on behalf of all of us. So there is that argument that a second job keeps it real, if you like.
Well, except if it's a real job.
Yeah, perhaps,
if it's just an advisory role, because they're an MP, therefore they can advise us and they may have a little bit of influence. Does that seem a bit dodgy?
That certainly seems...
I mean, if they were working down as a nurse or a doctor or down the local coffee shop or...
But, you know, you get into grey areas even with nursing, I think, because I was trying to get my head around this, whether or not NHS rota fixers are actually happy to work around an MP's voting responsibilities, whatever, or whether actually those nurses are part of a bank agency situation, in which case it's costing the NHS a huge amount of money. So I do think that it's not always as cut and dry, so she's a nurse or he's a nurse. Actually, you know, are they taking advantage of that system? I don't know. Or for raise more questions.
Or for £84,000 a year, should they be busy enough to keep them occupied 8 hours a day, 5 days a week?
That's just the salary, not including all the benefits in terms of second homes and expenses and all the rest of it. So.
Well...
It's a good job, let's be honest.
Job.
It's a great
expenses
job.
is difficult because a lot of some of them have expenses running into hundreds of thousands of pounds, but that's
still very nice to be able to
pay for
hop on a train and live somewhere else a few days a week.
Yeah, but that's sort of paying for the staff and things, isn't it? Because you've got to have your own staff, which is claimed on IPSA, and it gets very complicated.
Yeah, it does.
But anyway, let us know what you think.
Yeah, let us know. At 7:11, let's bring you up to date with the rest of today's top stories.
Donald Trump has been indicted by a grand jury in New York, making him the first former US president to face criminal charges. It's after an investigation into alleged hush money payments given to adult film star Stormy Daniels during his election campaign in 2016. Trump has responded. He says he's the most innocent man in US history.
A damning report into values and culture at fire and rescue services in England has found racist, sexist and homophobic behaviours are going unchallenged. Examples include humiliating new recruits, acting out rape, expecting women to make tea and dismissing racist language as banter. Well, His Majesty's Inspector of Fire and Rescue Services says the findings are deeply troubling.
And Gwyneth Paltrow has won a US lawsuit after being sued by a doctor over a ski crash in Utah. Jurors found she was not at fault for the collision, which left Terry Sanderson with broken ribs and head injuries. Ms Paltrow denied the claim. She's now been given damages of what she asked for, which is $1.
OK, a 34-year-old drug dealer who fatally shot 9-year-old Olivia Pratt-Corbell was yesterday found guilty of her murder at Manchester Crown Court.
Well, Thomas Cashman, who reportedly made up to £5,000 a week dealing cannabis in Liverpool, will be sentenced on Monday following that 18-day trial.
Well, our GB News North West correspondent Sophie Reaper has this report. A warning, though, some viewers may find the following footage upsetting.
A tragedy that rocked this proud city and its people. On the 22nd of August last year, 9-year-old Olivia Pratt-Corbell was fatally shot in her family home in Dovecot, Liverpool.
You're under arrest on suspicion of murder.
13 days later, Thomas Cashman was arrested and was later charged with the little girl's murder. Over the past few weeks, a jury at Manchester Crown Court has heard the details of this senseless tragedy. That night, CCTV shows shot after shot being fired at the gunman's target, Joseph Nee. Wounded, Nee tried to escape, and seeing an open door, he sought refuge there. This was the door to Cheryl Corbell's home. She'd opened it to see what was happening outside. Realising what was going on, she tried desperately to keep the two men out. Frightened, 9-year-old Olivia had come down the stairs. A shot was fired, injuring Cheryl and hitting the little girl in the chest. That shot would prove fatal to Olivia. In the following days, Merseyside police began their investigation to find the gunman, appealing to the local community for information.
The killing of a 9-year-old child is an absolute tragedy and crosses every single boundary. And I would urge them to do the right thing so we can put this person behind bars.
Meanwhile, as the hunts for the gunman continued, a heartbroken community gathered together to lay Olivia Pratt-Corbell to rest. Now, 7 months on, Merseyside police continue to push their crackdown on crime.
Beforehand, crime reporting was relatively low. Intelligence coming forward was relatively low. But since the unfortunate events, our engagement with this community has massively improved. It shows that the community want change.
It's hoped now that the murder of Olivia Pratt-Corbell will be a watershed moment for gun crime on Merseyside streets, so that no other family will have to feel the pain that hers did. Sophie Reaper, GB News.
Bless her. So sad.
I mean, it's just such an absolute tragedy. Talking about innocence being caught up in this sort of thing, it just goes beyond belief.
I think the headline, actually, in the front of the Telegraph is really
yes.
powerful this morning.
It's
It
an
says,
interesting
if you
one.
are buying drugs, then you killed Olivia. And I think that's thought-provoking for a lot of people. People think, you know what, they'll do a bit of cannabis on the weekend or whatever it might be and have nothing to do with it, but they don't think about where it comes from and how it got there and all of the gangland drug warfare that goes on, and in this case, involved a very sweet little girl.
Yeah, well, earlier we spoke to a former gang member, Mark Bracewell, who had this to say about the importance of people within that culture having the strength and the confidence to come forward with evidence.
It is hard, especially in these tight communities, to speak out against people that commit offences, because as you can see, this person went to extreme lengths to try and kill somebody and ended up killing somebody else, killing an innocent person. And obviously people... it is hard, especially in these tight communities, to speak out against people that commit offences, because as you can see, this person went to extreme lengths to try and kill somebody and ended up killing somebody else, killing an innocent person. And obviously people who have the information that we need to bring these people to justice are scared, and they don't feel protected, and that's why so many people do not come forward, you know. So it's about putting in place and installing in people from a young age, like we speak to our youngsters and we tell them it's okay to speak out. The person that speaks out is the person that we should be commending and we should be putting on a pedestal, because ultimately they're doing the right thing. And we just need to install it into the communities that speaking out is the right thing, because we need it to end. And that's the only way it's going to stop, is by us coming together and speaking out.
So I do think people like Mark, and I don't know his history. I don't know what,
he lost an eye, actually, during some sort of gang
issue.
Yeah, and he's had a difficult life, and actually, as he said, he needed hope, and yeah, he's wonderful.
Well, I think when it's people like that who've been there and done it, talking to young people, that actually that's how they learn in those, if they're tempted. That's how they learn, and whatever you think, I think that's an important lesson. And there are some communities, some areas, I mean, inner cities particularly, and it's areas often with a lot of deprivation, which I think there's underlying causes to all of this.
But I do want to go back to the email that we got in early doors from Nada. We grew up with nothing, yet we didn't turn to criminality as an excuse. And I think there is a sense, perhaps, that, you know, some people might say, well, are we supposed to feel sorry for Thomas Cashman? He could have said, no, I don't want to get involved in this. She said they do have alternatives. There is education. There are community groups. They can get a career to take them somewhere. I mean, I know it's always as easy as that.
No.
But I do also think it is a bit of a weak defence to say, we had nothing, I had no choice. You've always got a choice.
I just think
there is a difference between right and wrong.
Well, there is. And I think, though, that, you know, that it depends where you live. And I don't know where Nada's from, actually. But I think if you're living in an area which is deprived and there is already a gang culture, then you can see how people slip into it.
Yeah. Well, you need those role models like Mark, and that's why we salute him this morning. And we also really do salute the witness who basically this entire trial was based on her testimony, and she's now gone into witness protection because she was so brave in speaking out against Thomas Cashman, and that just speaks to the kind of fear in the gang culture, doesn't it? That she's going to need that, and that means she's walked away from her life as she knew it before, her profession, her family, her friends, everything. She'll have moved away, but she just decided there's no such thing as a grass when it comes to the innocence of a 9-year-old girl.
Well, a very brave lady, no doubt about it. Any thoughts on that? gbviews@gbnews.uk. You might have some thoughts about this as well, because we're going to show you King Charles as you've never seen him before. Well, sort of.
He looks gorgeous.
We'll tell you more in a minute. Calm down.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison? I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB+ radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News. The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories, controversies and issues.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
It's 5 times the opinion.
5 times the debate, and 5 times the fun. The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You could wink at the end. I can't Britain's wink, listening.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
"7:24, good morning to you. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Isabel. It's like the old days.
It is like the old days. My old telly husband.
We used to work together, you know.
Lots of people have noticed, actually. Lots of tweets and emails saying, lovely to see you guys back together. So thanks for staying with us.
Well,
we've been having lots of fun in the break as well. You've been showing me choirs doing remixes of songs. It's really hot in here this morning, and I was singing.
It's getting hot in here. And if you have a look on YouTube, there's a choir of elderly people in the United States taking their robes off and singing
their cassocks.
And it's the most disturbing thing I've ever seen.
I'm going to put it on Instagram later.
Why they would do that, I don't know, because they don't know the song. And
they probably don't realise it's a bit cheeky.
There's one lady there who just doesn't like it. It's very hot in here.
It's very hot in here, but we won't be taking off all our clothes.
We will not. Thank you very much indeed.
Not now, anyway. Right, to royal matters, much more sensible matters, and the first yet commissioned portrait of King Charles since taking the throne has been revealed this week.
Yeah, I love all these, you know. I don't know why, I just like these sort of things, pictures that you can tell what they are. Painted in oils by Alistair Barford. It's a personal and intimate image of His Majesty, showing him in a suit rather than ceremonial robes.
And very pleased to say we're joined by the man himself, the painter, not the king, that is. Alistair, welcome to the programme. And look, I know you were really keen to try and capture the sensitivity of the king. And look, I'm no art critic, but it certainly seems to me as though you really nailed that. He looks so warm and sort of grandfatherly and approachable, but also still regal. I think it's wonderful.
Well, thank you.
I mean, how do you set about trying to make somebody look sensitive?
I don't know. I think my way of working is really tends to be, and it wasn't in this instance, working from life. And when you work from life, you spend a lot of time with the person, and over the course of that time, you try to, I think, capture those best fleeting moments. So the resultant portrait may be something that never quite existed as a single moment, like as in a photograph, but is a synthesis of all those moments. And I think with this, I was looking at an awful lot of different images, ones that I had taken, ones that other people have taken, in order to try and convey something of that. Because it's funny, I think when you're working on a portrait, even when you're working at a distance, as I was with this, you develop a sort of a relationship with the person, and that you just try to convey that however best you can.
Well, I think you've done it marvellously, to be honest. I think there is, as Isabel says, there's something very warm and approachable about it. But why did you get commissioned for this? What do you know anything about the decision process behind you being picked?
Yeah, well, there's a few reasons. One is I received a scholarship from the Queen Elizabeth Scholarship Trust. King Charles was formerly a patron of this. It's a scholarship that is set up to preserve British craftsmanship, and it funded my first year of training in portrait painting in Italy. And the Illustrated London News, who commissioned me, have produced a publication called the Illustrated Coronation, I think. For every copy that is sold, a donation will be made to Quest. So it's raising money to help other people benefit as I did from Quest's incredible support.
And I see you're speaking to us from Frome this morning. I know it well, and it's actually renowned, isn't it, for craftsmanship, for artisans as well, and lots of artists in and around that beautiful corner of Somerset. You said that you didn't necessarily do sort of seated painting sessions with the King for this, but have you met him during all of this, and where? And you know, what's his response been to the portrait?
I didn't really meet him. I was invited to Buckingham Palace to... it was a biodiversity event, and I was in the King's presence for probably about an hour and a half as he was meeting and greeting and interacting with various representatives from biodiversity and sustainability projects, and that was the access that I had.
May I ask you, Alice, sorry to interrupt. You seem young. I don't know if you're younger than his own sons, but, I mean, it's quite a coup to have got the first portrait, isn't it?
Yes, it's slightly overwhelming.
Well, I tell you what a nice way to be overwhelmed, though, by something which, you know, ultimately will go down in history. You know, the first commissioned picture will forever be by you.
Yeah, it's a huge honour, and as I say, through the King's patronage, through Quest, and also I spent some time at it was then the Prince's Drawing School. It's now the Royal Drawing School. So it's lovely to be associated in this way, because actually through his patronage and through his projects, I've been given opportunities that I would never otherwise have received, including painting the King and a few years ago the Queen as well. So.
Well, in my humble opinion, very well deserved. Alistair Barford, fascinating talking to you, and goodness knows what the future holds.
Oh, I wonder. This is the best PR you could ever hope for, isn't it? Painting the King like this. Really good to see you this morning.
Also, Stephen would love a portrait.
Oh, I'd love one. Thank you.
Actually, he's got the blue suit, hasn't he? Have you got any Amazonian tribal wristbands on?
I've got anything you like.
A bit of gold, bit of bling.
Yeah, a bit of bling. I've always got the bling on.
There you
go. Alistair, thanks. Good to talk to you.
Thank you.
Do you know what? I just think it is such a skill to be able to do that, and even we get some abstracty stuff as well, which is an incredible skill. But something like that, which is like real life. And you can really see almost the feeling in his face. I mean, I just think it's remarkable.
Are you an arty person?
No, I'm not an arty person at all.
I'm just showing you a portrait that my father once painted of me. I don't know if I'll have to get that on screen. That was me when I was a baby.
I mean, that's interesting.
That's the only portrait I've ever had done. That's me drinking from a baby's bottle. Where's camera 3 now?
That
was me.
It's interesting, that.
It does look just like me, actually.
I think he's going to get a commission to paint the King.
Well, you never know. You never know. He might be watching.
It's not as bad as it looks on camera.
So
put it that
cheeky.
way. Apologies, Mr. Webster. But anyway, there you go. It's all right.
It's very good, but
It's all
perhaps
right.
not as good as Alistair's. Right, we're going to take a quick break,
Oh, are we?
Yes, and after that, we'll be talking about the newspapers. We've got Sean and Liz
smashing.
back for that.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island's story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people. Vox Populi, Vox Dei. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel. Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
7:36, good morning to you. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Isabel.
Says Stephen and Anne in the auto cue there, didn't it?
She's still away. Will people stop messaging me saying, when's Anne coming back? She's off.
When she's ready.
She's having some time off.
Yeah.
I'm still in touch with her all the time. She's coming back to GB News. It's not, she hasn't gone. And everyone's conspiracy theories. Is she left? No, she hasn't. She's just having a break.
Yeah, she'll be back.
So,
right, we are going through the papers today. Sean MacDonald, Liz Kershaw here to take us through them, and we can take a quick look at some of the front pages.
Oh, do you?
Why not?
All right, go on then.
Most of them, to be honest, we'll start with the Express, focusing on the trial wrapping up yesterday in the case of Olivia Pratt-Corbell. Justice for Olivia, says the Express, as Cashman was convicted.
The Times says workers are facing a rapid rise in retirement age under a proposed pensions cap.
The Eye takes a bit further, depressing reading if you're in your 40s. It says there'll be a sting in the tail. Those in their 40s may have to work until they're 70.
The Guardian has tax and price rises, claiming families will be £700 a year worse off.
And finally, the Daily Star reports on artificial intelligent chatbots that are going to take over the world, but are at the moment still being befuddled by Wordle, so perhaps we don't need to panic just yet.
OK, I mean, crazy.
So much to get into in that story.
Yes, it's just bonkers. Let's talk to the hosts of Blethered Podcast, Sean MacDonald and legendary broadcaster Liz Kershaw, who are both here. Good morning to you both.
Hiya.
Morning.
Let's have a look. Oh, what have we got? I've got the wrong list here.
The Telegraph. Okay.
Oh, there you go. That's fine. Thank you very much.
If you're buying drugs, you are responsible for Olivia's death, and this is what the police have come out and said, and I think that's a really powerful message, Liz.
Yeah, it shook me when I saw it yesterday. I mean, we've heard a lot in recent years about county lines and young teenagers buzzing up and down the country on late-night trains to deliver drugs to the shires so that wealthy people at dinner parties can snort coke.
Yeah.
And next time I'm in, because I know them because I've worked in the music business for so long. Next time I'm in the presence of a rock star, and he gets his credit card out and starts chopping up on the table in the hotel room, I'll be thinking more about what's gone into not just the gangs in Colombia and getting it over here and somebody swallowing packets of drugs, which, if you've seen that come out, it's disgusting. Yeah. It's what it takes to actually put those drugs into people's hands. So I absolutely agree with this policeman. However, what I would say is, why are certain drugs illegal and others are freely available to buy in shops or be prescribed by doctors? I mean, my mum was on a cocktail of mind-altering drugs. I can't remember all the names, but and you can go and buy alcohol. You can get pissed and violent. Yeah, I'm saying it to make an impact. I apologise to anybody sensitive watching. But then if you're sensitive, you're probably not watching this anyway. The government hypocritically allows the sale of alcohol and tobacco. It's just hiked the price of a packet of fags by £1.50, and takes the tax. There's like more than 2/3 of the price of a packet of cigarettes goes to the Treasury, and at the same time they tell us it's unhealthy. Well, yes, it is, and so is alcohol, and so is cocaine, and so is the kind of cannabis that's sold these days. So my thing is, and I've seen experts discuss this, policemen and doctors who are into addiction treatment. If it were available, licensed, taxed, distributed like alcohol, tobacco, barbiturates that are prescribed by the NHS,
it's not going to happen.
Then you would. Well, I'm just saying, in an ideal world, you wouldn't have these idiots going round gunslinging round Liverpool, and it's nothing to do. I lived in Liverpool. I first went to Liverpool in the 60s as a child. I was so shocked to see the Scotland Road with all the bars on the shop windows. I was asking my dad why it was, and then I lived in Liverpool in the 70s during strikes and everything. It was more deprived then than it is now. Liverpool's had a real boost culturally, economically. You can't blame deprivation for this carry-on. It's drugs.
Well, let me just say, Harry's been in touch, and Harry says, how dare you blame Olivia's death on cannabis at the weekend? When you make anything illegal, it becomes a black market. It has nothing to do with the substance itself.
No, let's bring Sean into the debate, because I know that you've got a problem with the glamorisation of some of the characters involved in this trial.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we went off on quite the tangent there, so let's come back to the headline. So Merseyside Police saying if you're buying drugs, you're responsible for Olivia's death. I think that's a slight... You could argue there's a slight bit of mendacity in that statement, in the sense that this is a multifaceted issue. There are people who are involved in this chain all the way through. Yes, there is a degree of culpability, I would say. However, this is a wider issue. I think the people who are ultimately responsible and shouldn't be getting a let-off is the man who's committed the murder and his accomplice.
Well, he hasn't got off, has he? He's been
who tried to get him off. No, we're talking about with Merseyside Police giving that.
If these middle-class people having, cocaine at dinner parties stopped using it, then these dealers wouldn't have the fast cars and the glamorous partners.
Of course,
and this
which
life
is
of crime and...
Yeah, so like I was saying, it comes down to this. There is a multifaceted sort of chain. But these people, if they're behaving in the criminal underworld, and they're part of that, they're going to find other ways. It's not going to be their only source of income. There are also social sort of contributing factors, like you were talking to the young guy who used to be in the gangs, and he was saying that when he went out, these were the people that he was surrounded with. There was maybe a lack of role models. There was a lack of sort of other opportunities or other routes. And this is a wee girl that's lost her life, and it is ultimately somebody horrific who's done it. I think it's inaccurate to say that it's solely of people that are consuming drugs. It's a much wider sort of mosaic.
Yeah.
Which is why I widened it out. Yeah.
Let's have a look at the eye, Sean. There's an outcry because people don't want over these plans to house migrants on a barge. I mean, whether it's the it's rudimentary accommodation, whether it's barge, whether it's old student accommodation, whether it's old and disused army accommodation, people aren't happy.
Yeah, this is taken... this specific one is in Portland Port in Dorset. Now, I think the headline is "Plan to put migrants on barge sparks local outcry." But I think language is important. These are asylum seekers, and that's, I mean, a whole other... I mean,
are they?
It's a whole... Yeah, they are. They are the asylum seekers. If you read the story, you see that that's where they are. We have a responsibility as part of the global asylum system to be taking people. They have to go somewhere. Again, I come back to it's the unenviable position. Where do you put them? Because there's a lack of affordable housing, there's a lack of housing. In Glasgow, quite near me, there's a cruise ship, like a commercial cruise liner, which has Ukrainian asylum seekers. And it's bad for them. It's not good for the area. You know, it's unfair to be putting them in these wee cabins. Dorset Council have said that they have concerns about the suitability of the location because it's an area that's restricted, but people can come and go, so that has its own issues. And you've got Paul Kimber, a local Labour councillor, saying that the problems with the location and where people are being put.
The truth is, we can list all the problems with it, but what is the answer? If it's not the barge, and as you say, we have this responsibility to take a proportion of them, what we need to build more of these suitable houses. Where do we find the money for that? Where do we build them? I mean, there's always going to be... It is a problem.
It is, and I would say so, but, you know, the lack of housing doesn't just apply to asylum seekers, you know, it applies to people across the country, people struggling to have places to live. The answer is, in a nutshell, to build more houses. It's not always that simple. No. Which is why we're at this crossroads.
Let's have a look at the Telegraph, Liz, and CGT, capital gains tax. What is Labour going to do if it gets into power?
Well, the point of this story is they don't really seem to know. Angela Rayner, the deputy leader of the Labour Party, announced that they would increase it. So currently you pay capital gains tax according to the rate of income tax you pay. So if you pay lower rate, 20%, you'll pay 18% capital gains. And if you pay the higher rate of 40%, you'll pay 28%. So Angela Rayner was saying everybody should pay 40% tax, capital gains tax. So if you've got shares and you sell them, or you've bought a property and you sell that...
a lot of people do as their retirement plan.
Yeah, then you should pay 40% capital gains tax on it. However... she's been kind of shouted down by Rachel Reeves, the Shadow Chancellor, who said she's got no plans to change capital gains tax. Sir Keir Starmer has said, we will set out our position when we go into an election, so he's not saying, and neither is Yvette Cooper. I think any party that really tries to... I think the whole tax system is so complicated and... it's not a level playing field. It's a brave party that says, right, we're going to grab this and we're going to completely revise and streamline the tax system in this country. But any party that attempts to dabble with not capital gains tax so much, but more a contentious issue, inheritance tax, is really, if they try and increase it, is really...
I mean, inheritance tax is just so wrong. It just is. Yeah. It's just so wrong.
Well, it doesn't affect... I mean, they'll be playing to different groups, won't they? The Labour Party's got a problem because, on the one hand, they'll be playing to what's described now as the red wall. So you'll be playing to people who live in Rochdale, where I come from, and Wigan, and right up to the north east, whose homes, if they were to die, like my mum, when she died, her house was worth 290,000. We weren't troubled by that, no. But if you had the same house in the southeast, it'd be like 800,000 or more. If you've got a terraced house, as you know, in London, you can't leave it to your kids because you're only allowed, as a married couple, you'd be allowed up to £1 million for your prime residence, and then you could have been paying a fantastically high mortgage and working hard to do that all your life to pay it off. Anyway, it's just contentious. And I'm just saying, the Labour Party can't seem to say what the policy is at the moment, but the Conservatives also... it was increased slightly by Cameron and Osborne so that you can leave a house up to £1 million to your children or spouse without incurring inheritance tax to make sure people didn't lose their homes. But that's 10 years ago now. Everybody's scared of it, and And as I say, it's part of the whole tax system, which it's so bitty, isn't it? And I know it's a minefield.
Yeah, well, there'll be people watching who've been affected by that, maybe lost their spouse and then lost their home as a result of inheritance tax. And do get in touch, tell us your stories. It is an emotive topic and probably the most unpopular tax out there, isn't it? But I know we're talking about capital gains, but inheritance, as you say, one of the most poisonous. Any thoughts on inheritance tax there, Sean? Before we wrap the papers? Or...
No, you've covered it.
Yeah, fair enough.
Thank you.
Well, look, we're going to leave that there with Sean and with Liz. More from both of them just after 8:30.
Let's bring you up to date, though, with the some of the headlines, at least today, at 7:48. And Turkey's parliament has approved a bill to allow Finland to join NATO as Ukraine's president marks 400 days of the war today. Turkey was the last of 30 members in the Western Defence Alliance to ratify Finland's membership after Hungary approved a similar bill earlier this week. Finland and Sweden applied to join the alliance last year in response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
Now, scientists have observed an explosion in space the same size as our entire solar system. The event, which happened 180 million light years away, is a disc-like shape, as you can see if you're watching on the TV this morning, as opposed to spherical, and it's baffled astronomers. They say it's flatter than they ever thought was possible. Scientists at the University of Sheffield say it changes everything that they knew about explosions in space. Goodness me.
Now, about 1.7 million workers will benefit from a national minimum wage increase tomorrow. If you're 23, you'll now get a 92p rise to £10.42 an hour. The Resolution think tank called it the biggest annual cash rise in the 24-year history of the minimum wage.
Right, Gwyneth Paltrow will be waking up this morning absolutely delighted. She said yesterday she was pleased with the outcome of her high-profile US skiing collision lawsuit.
Yeah, the jury found in her favour and that she was not at fault. Let's talk to our showbiz reporter, Stephanie Tetchy. Good
morning, Stephen and Isabel.
I'm a little bit surprised at this, only because when we're looking at some of the evidence that was coming out, some of it was extremely controversial and seemed a bit weird.
Yeah, with these celebrity court cases, they're filled with so much drama, and exactly this is what it was been over the past 2 weeks. Worldwide audiences have been tuned to the live streaming of it, but I have to say I feel like justice has been served. It's been 7 years in the making, and the evidence has been quite damaging on both sides, for both Gwyneth. I do feel like Gwyneth had much more to lose. Gwyneth, it was never about the money, because she was only suing him for symbolically $1 American, where for her it was about her reputation. She felt she was being exploited because she was a celebrity in this case, because you have to think, if she wasn't a celebrity, would this have gone to court? I don't think so. Terry Sanderson, he has much more to lose in this, and he has lost quite a bit, because he'll be paying Gwyneth's attorney fees, which will be hundreds of thousands of dollars. Also, the fact that he now has been found guilty of this, Gwyneth was cleared. But the damaging stuff that he came out with, like comparing her to Jeffrey Epstein, calling her Godzilla, it was really uncalled for. But with Gwyneth, she said some damaging stuff as well, because she said she felt like she had been sexually assaulted. We've got a clip here.
I was skiing and two skis came between my skis, forcing my legs apart, and then there was a body pressing against me, and there was a very strange grunting noise. So my brain was trying to make sense of what was happening. I thought, is this a practical joke? Is someone doing something perverted? This is really, really strange. My mind was going very, very quickly, and I was trying to ascertain what was happening.
Look, there was a clip of this. I mean, look, legitimately, I'm sure as a celebrity, you do have some quite scary encounters at times. But I think overall, it's probably fair to say that both of them came out looking quite petty at times, quite unlikable at times.
Totally.
And I suppose the big question in all of this is really, was it worth it for Dr. Sanderson? Clearly not, because he's going to have to pay all her legal fees. But, could this all have been avoided?
I think it could have been avoided as well, because, he's been portrayed as a chancer in that sense, because, medically he says he's had this brain injury. And the evidence that came out on Wednesday, there was pictures of him in Morocco riding camels. He's been trekking in Peru. And one of the things he he said is now he's going to be on the internet forever, because, you know, with these celebrity cases, the amount of memes that have come out, and we also have a clip of Terry where it's like he's been over-animated about everything that happened, and it's quite sad.
Well, let's have a look.
I just remember everything was great, and then I heard something I've never heard at a ski resort, and that was a blood-curdling scream. Just, I can't do it. It was, and then, boom. And it was like somebody was out of control and gonna hit a tree and was gonna die. And that's what I had until I was hit.
It's all very hard.
It is, but, you know, Gwyneth, as she left, she said to him, I wish you well. So the Queen of Wellbeing still retains her crown.
Yeah, I wish you well and pay my legal bills.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, dear me. It's a funny one. These celebrities... She didn't bring it, did she?
No, she didn't. And it just goes to show how celebrities can be exposed in these kind of situations and be exploited as well.
All right, well, listen, Stephanie, thank you for all of that.
Always a joy. You smell lovely today.
Thank you. I've got my friend, he's started these perfumes and he's given it to me. It's got sandalwood and lavender. It's a nice little mix, really calming.
It's very, very nice.
Shout out there. Alex, stay with us. Lots more still to come for you. Coming up at 8 o'clock, we'll have more on the historic post-Brexit trade agreement. Details in a mo.
Hello there, welcome to your latest weather update from the Metaverse. I'm Jonathan Vaughtry. It is certainly a windy start to Friday for southern coast of England and Wales. That's due to low pressure that has been tracking its way through overnight, and this squeeze in the isobars here is really providing gales severe for a time. We could see gusts of 60, maybe up to 70 miles per hour through this early part of the morning. But underneath the main low pressure centre, winds are much lighter across many other areas of the UK. This is being accompanied by rain, certainly some persistent rain across areas of the southwest, particularly Devon and Cornwall, 15 to 25 millimetres building up, and there is a rain warning in force. Other areas of showery rain and drizzle persisting in many other locations, particularly across eastern coastal areas, as we see cloud pushing its way in from the North Sea. And where that cloud really persists, we can see some sea fog and temperatures not climbing much higher than 9 degrees Celsius. But a little brighter for western Scotland, and that's where we could see temperatures climb to around 15 degrees in Oban. As we move throughout to the overnight period, there's this trailing band of rain that's going to be persistent across, again, southwestern areas of England, Wales and up into Northern Ireland. That's going to linger throughout much of the night and will remain in place as you wake up on Saturday morning as well. The cloud, pretty much persistent for many of us, but that will hold temperatures up a fair amount. Just some of those clearer spells across Scotland may see temperatures drop down into mid or low single figures. Saturday then looks like a pretty cloudy one for many of us, still with this band of rain in the west, but further patches of drizzle pushing into eastern coastal areas as well. Best of the brightness, northwest England up into western areas of Scotland, where we could see a few brighter, sunnier spells in there. Temperatures around, if not slightly below average for the time of year. Again, highs between 9, maybe 14 degrees Celsius in places. High pressure looks to build as we move into Sunday, and so that's certainly looking to be the better half of the weekend. We just need to watch out for if that will stick around into the new working week or if other fronts will make their way in. Bye-bye.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle.
Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you.
She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank. My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m.
as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel.
The UK has announced its biggest trade deal since Brexit.
Good morning, thank you for tuning in. It's 8 o'clock on Friday, the 31st of March. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Isabel. Here are your top stories this morning.
Well, Britain has signed a deal to join a major Indo-Pacific trade bloc stretching from Canada to Australia. The Prime Minister says it puts the UK in a prime position and will lead to a £1.8 billion boost to the economy.
Donald Trump's been indicted on criminal charges overnight relating to an alleged hush money payment to an adult film actress. He's the first former US president to face criminal charges in court.
And how safe do you feel on a night out? Turns out quite a lot of us feel uncomfortable while we're on the town with friends. Some saying they can't tell the difference between someone who's drunk or perhaps had their drink spiked, which is on the rise. It's a real concern, especially for young women. Actually, it's got to be stamped out.
Yeah, tell us your stories. Get involved with the programme. We love to hear from you. We'll try to read out as many of those thoughts as well. Send in your emails to gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Now, it's Britain's biggest trade deal since leaving the European Union.
That's right. The UK has agreed to join the Indo-Pacific Trading Bloc, which is known rather catchily as the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership.
Now, the government says joining the group will boost UK exports because it cuts tariffs on things like cheese, cars and whiskey. And the Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, has commented on the deal this morning.
The significance of joining the Pacific Trade Bloc is that this is one of the fastest growing areas in the world. Around half of the world's middle class consumers will be in this block of countries by the end of the decade. It's a massive opportunity for British exporters, and combined with the very attractive business taxes that we introduced in the budget, a £9 billion cut in corporation tax, that will mean that the UK economy has very big long-term growth opportunities.
You think China should be allowed into that trade bloc?
Well, that's a decision for all the members of that bloc. And all I would say is that Britain now has a vote in deciding that. And that shows that our influence in this part of the world is becoming more significant.
Just finally,
well, there you go. That's the Chancellor of the Exchequer. Let's talk to the former Chief Secretary to the Treasury, David Mellor. David, good morning to you.
Morning.
What do you make of this? And actually, what do you make of what was actually a very good question as to whether at some point China could enter this? Because that would have a significant impact, wouldn't it?
Yes, it would do, but I think they're not going to be very keen at the moment until these various political issues involving China, because most of the people who are members of this bloc have issues with China over, for instance, their attempt to dominate the South China Sea and beyond. But look, the government are going to make a big deal of this. It's been quite a long time coming, and they talk about 1.8 billion. OK, it's better than not having 1.8 billion, but just look at what we pay for the NHS every year, and in 1.8 billion, it's not a lot of money. I think that the whole idea of Brexit was that it was going to mean Britain could sail the high seas like the pirates used to do, and put in for treasure wherever in the world they thought it appropriate. Well, that hasn't worked that way, and
not yet.
No. I mean, I'm hoping it will, but I try to be realistic. I could get into my party mode and talk a lot of guff, but I'm trying to be an honest Indian here. And when Boris talked about getting Brexit done, what he meant was getting something on the statute book. Of course, what most of us hoped he would mean by getting Brexit done was to change the way the country did business and indeed to open us up to global influencers. Well, this is the first one, and let us hope more comes of it. After all, they produce 15% of the world's wealth, this grouping. But I don't see it as anything more than, well, that's nice, rather than this is fantastic.
David, we've got the King coming back from a royal tour of duty, what would you call it? A royal state visit to Europe. And, the government advised him to do that because he wanted a bit of soft power to kind of improve relations with our closest neighbours. What will the EU make of us joining the CPTPP? Because we know they want to join, and they might have their noses out of joint a bit by this, mightn't
Yes,
they?
I think that they might. But the whole idea is we have to prove that, the decision to leave the EU. I mean, I was a bit like that, someone who goes to a football game and doesn't like either of the teams on the pitch, I mean, I didn't like the EU. And I once asked a very old friend of mine, leading cabinet minister under Margaret Thatcher, when did he get fed up with the EU? And he said, when I started to go to Brussels. And that was exactly, the log rolling, the selfishness, the lack of real serious commitment to building a proper European base for us all. So the fact that hasn't, the EU was for me a failure. And, I thought it was the greatest day of my life. I was in the House of Commons. I mean, I was in having a drink with a member the evening that we voted to join the EU. And I thought this was wonderful. But it wasn't really when you look back on it.
And just explain the difference with this trading bloc and the European Union, which, of course, was a big trading bloc that we used to be part of. There's no political oversight in this.
You see,
that's a key distinction.
That's exactly right. That's where the EU went wrong. It became a political move to try to drive a united Europe, whereas this has got nothing to do with that. It simply tries to facilitate trade and the creation of wealth in, a very significant chunk of the world. But, I was saying a bit earlier, I don't like the EU, and I was always very, very, very suspicious of a lot of the hucksterism that went into selling how much better it was going to be if we weren't in the EU. Well, it hasn't been that much better not being in the EU. It doesn't mean I want to go back into the EU, certainly not. But, let's be honest, it's, if anything, the jury is out, and at least here, they begin to have something they can put in front of the jury and say, look, we couldn't have got this if we'd still been in the EU.
And that makes it then harder, does it, for us to ever get back in, or harder for the Labour Party if they get into government? Because, I mean, look, let's look at the polls. In our People's poll this week, Labour, I mean, they're down 1%, Conservatives are up 2%, but it's still an 18-point lead. I mean, it's, you know, 1 or 2% is neither here nor there, is it?
It's hugely... The only thing one can say, see, the right comparison, as we look at whether the government have any chance of surviving, is what happened in '97, when a good Conservative government under John Major, doing well with the economy, was ditched by the voters because they had already delivered their verdict on things that had happened a few years before. And I think the problem here is, can Labour hang on to that lead? And the one hope for the Conservatives is that we need to remember back in 1997, Tony Blair was genuinely popular in the country and genuinely seen as someone who had a lot of the answers. I don't think anyone feels that way about Keir Starmer.
No. Can I ask you about May the 4th? Because it is May the 4th, isn't it? The local elections. I just got very confused with Star Wars Day then. It threw me. I mean, I got our polling cards through yesterday, and it made me think, heck, this is approaching thick and fast. I mean, it's hard to imagine how this is going to be anything other than disastrous for the Conservatives.
Of course. It will inevitably be disastrous for the Conservatives. Because, you see, don't forget, the whole nature of elections has changed. When I was a Member of Parliament in inner London, we used to canvass, even at local elections, every house containing people who were doubtful 2 or 3 times during an election. You never see a canvasser now. No one ever knocks on your door and say, you know, I'm Joe Sploggs from the Conservative
They never
Party.
stop knocking on my door, and I always have to say to them, I'm a journalist and I don't talk about politics.
They just want to talk to you.
Well, maybe.
It's never been a issue I've ever had to worry about, but, you know, but they obviously wanted to talk to you. No, but the point is, political activity in Britain has never been at a lower level than it is.
Yeah.
And so all they do is fire bits of paper through the door. And does that make people feel committed to the political process? No, it doesn't.
No, that's a very fair point. David, good to see you, as always. Thank you very much indeed.
Right, let's turn our attention to the United States. Donald Trump has been indicted by a grand jury in New York, which makes him the first former US president to face criminal charges.
Yeah, we'll get rid of those pictures of firefighters, because it's after an investigation into that alleged hush money payment given to adult film star Stormy Daniels during the 2016 election campaign. Mr. Trump says he is the most innocent man in US history.
Well, it comes just days after he launched...
David's
There goes
off.
David. You're welcome to stay for this if you want.
You can stand in the middle, David. It looks good. It looks good. He's off.
Oh, my goodness me. Anyway, look, he's on course, he says, for the 2024 Republican nomination campaign. He launched it, of course, in Texas.
Well, let's talk to Freddie Gray, who's the deputy political editor of The Spectator, who joins us now. Freddie, good to see you this morning. What do you make of all of this? Because it's a difficult one, isn't it? That even if there is a case to answer here, even if he has done something wrong, the fact is it's hard to move away from this looking like it is politically motivated.
Well, that's exactly right. This is an extraordinary moment, a historical moment. For a president to be indicted, not only for a president to be indicted for the first time, but also for the fact that he's the leading candidate to be the Republican nominee in next year's presidential election, that is absolutely extraordinary. And Republicans talk a lot about the weaponization of justice and how it makes America look like a banana republic. But I think even from a neutral point of view, you have to say this is banana republic stuff. This is obviously politicized. You know, it was drawn up and brought by a district attorney who was elected on a promise that he would get Trump. Under an attorney general who was elected under the promise that she would get Trump, in a highly politicized environment in the New York judiciary system. It's absolutely extraordinary. And Whatever you think of Donald Trump, I think any person who's concerned about American democracy and the role of justice in democracies should be highly concerned about this story.
And Freddie, tell me, there's some sort of school of thought, and I think Elon Musk has said this. He thinks that actually this won't hurt Donald Trump's chances of A, getting the nomination, but B, possibly winning a presidential election. But presumably there must be wings of the Republican Party who are what we would call traditional conservatives, who are actually quite offended by any discussion of porn stars and hush money. Whether or not this is politically motivated, it's distasteful, surely, amongst conservative groups. And I wonder if perhaps, DeSantis could be the net beneficiary of this, and maybe Elon Musk has got it wrong.
Well, I think you're quite right. A lot of conservatives are uncomfortable about porn money, porn stars and hush money and so on. But this was all known in 2016 and Donald Trump won the election. There's nothing new there. What Ron DeSantis' position is interesting. He's already said this morning that if New York want to extradite Donald Trump from Florida, where he lives, which is Ron DeSantis' state, he's governor of Florida, he will resist it. So that could be a very interesting development, because DeSantis is seen by a traitor as the Trump people, but now he will, in the public's eye, be someone who's actually defending Trump against an obviously politicized indictment, I should say, not prosecution.
Yeah.
Which again is that's all playing the political game as well, isn't it? I mean, look. Can I ask you, because, you made a very valid point in saying this is politicised, there's no way of getting around it, because of the way these officials are elected into the judiciary, if you like, in the United States. However, if there is a case to answer here, if there has been some fiddling about with the books to make this payment, if it was made to look like something else, then shouldn't there be a case to answer, whether it's politicised or not?
Well, if Trump is found guilty, he's found guilty. But the technical, the indictment is sealed, so we don't know what it is. We know that there are 30 counts on the indictment. But the technical aspect that it's thought that the Manhattan District Attorney is going after is that he used the hush money as a campaign contribution, and that would be illegal under federal law. And the Federal Electoral Commission has already looked into this and found him not guilty. There have been various other investigations that have been dropped at the federal and the state level. So what you see is an obvious attempt not to find the crime and then convict, but to find the criminal and then find a crime to attach him to.
Right.
And that, again, whatever you think of Donald Trump, that's an important betrayal of the basic principles of justice.
And where are we at in terms of if he does get convicted for this? I was reading some correspondence this morning saying that we could even be discussing possibly electing or seeing a president being elected from behind bars. Is that a realistic possibility?
Well, there's nothing in the Constitution that says someone can't be elected president behind bars. Indeed, I think Eugene Dobbs, was he called Eugene Dobbs? He ran from jail before. Not such a major candidate in terms of the numbers. But yes, it could. And you're quite right, Isabel, to say the Trump campaign think this could help them. Elon Musk is right to say that. They think that this is proof or a validation of what Trump has been saying all along, which is that there's a deep state out to get Trump at all costs and so on. So yes, he will lean into this. And as I put in one piece, he'll probably use, if there's a mugshot, a jailbird mugshot, he'll probably use that as his campaign poster.
Gosh.
They used to talk about Teflon Tony, didn't they, over here? It's nothing on Teflon Trump, is it?
Well, I don't know. This is probably the closest anybody's got to, the mission has been to get Trump. This is probably the closest anyone's got. But as we say, it could end up improving his polling somewhat. The difficulty is it improves his polling with people who are inclined to like him. It's not going to convince anybody who's sort of sitting on the fence that he's a more attractive choice.
Yeah.
Well, it's fascinating, isn't it? And we all sort of watch with it's like almost bemusement, but it's quite serious, so it's not in any way titillating. It's bizarre, really.
Well, it's a bit like it is like an American daytime TV soap opera, isn't it? I mean, it's just.
Well, this is what Trump brings to every question. This is why he's such a fascinating figure in so many ways. He's made everything into reality TV, even when it's not its fault. He's just created a sort of new political reality, which is like a drama.
Can I just ask you, just before we let you go, the one comment he's made about this, and this is what worries me slightly. He's not come out with a sensible response to this. He said, "I'm the most innocent man in US history," which again is ridiculous, isn't it?
Yes. Well, he always speaks. He speaks only in hyperbole. That's his method. But I mean, I agree. I think it's circus stuff. He's clearly not the most innocent man in US history. Although, even the affair, it's now reported of as a fact. He disputes it, and Stormy Daniels' statements on it have been very inconsistent. So I don't think everybody should talk as though that he definitely committed the affair, which of course wouldn't even be illegal. So. And the hush money stuff is also not technically illegal. I mean, it's quite often done that people have paid money in order not to speak publicly about things. That's immoral, but it's not illegal.
Fascinating, always. Freddie, thank you so much for squeezing us in at short notice this morning as well. This story developed overnight for us. Thank you, Freddie Gray.
Great pleasure. Love you, Steve.
Freddie just... I don't know what it is about Freddie. He just... gets it in the right way, doesn't he?
Everything.
He just makes it more understandable.
Totally.
Somehow. AJ's been in touch. Hi, AJ. Says, "I'm absolutely no fan of Trump. He was an awful president. But anyone with an ounce of common sense can tell the indictment is politically motivated, and to say otherwise is disingenuous at best."
Brian says it's nothing more than a witch hunt, much like the situation with Boris. And Pauline says Trump and Boris are angels compared with Blair, Bush and slimy Clinton. In both cases, it's a witch hunt. This is the thing in the court case, and this is what Freddie and I suppose you were getting at with the point, if this is in court, there is a threshold that has to be met with the burden of proof.
There is a case to answer.
If there is a case, there is a case, whether or not it's politically brought or not. But it just remains to see how it all plays out, I suppose.
Yes, but then, as Freddie said, there's been several attempts to sort of get him on this at a federal level, which would be more serious, and that hasn't worked.
But also, I think the jury involvement in all of this is interesting. Presumably, that jury has to be very carefully picked from a neutral standpoint in terms of the makeup of the jury.
Well, you'd imagine so.
So, absolutely fascinating. We'll keep a close eye on all of the developments over the pond. Always interesting.
But there you go. It's the grand jury, and how that all works is a little bit beyond me, because we have nothing like that over here, do we?
Right, stay with us. We have more to come, including...
That's shutting me up, isn't it?
Yeah, we're moving on to sports
now. Sorry now.
We've got the former England cricketer Stuart Meeker and our very own Aidan McGee. It's worth shutting up for.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things. We've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons? I don't believe in prisons. I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories, controversies and issues.
With us four, plus a special guest.
It's 5 times the opinion, 5 times the debate, and 5 times the fun. The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You could wink at the end. I can't believe I can't Britain's wink. Listening.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
"8:24, good morning to you. Watching and listening to Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Isabel. Still to come.
New research reveals the worries young people experience on nights out as many youngsters call for venues to be made safer.
And as the King wraps up his visit to Germany, our royal reporter is on the ground filling us in on the plans for later today.
And we love to hear from you. We really do read all your emails, all your thoughts. Keep them coming in. gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Let's have a look at all the sport for you this morning. Aidan McGee is here. Good morning.
Morning to you. Good to be with you.
How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Yeah,
How's the hangover?
Not too bad. Yeah, I got back on Monday, recovered from the hangover probably about yesterday afternoon, I'd say.
Oh, I had a very, very big party weekend, you dirty stop out. Let's have a look at the Premier League, shall we?
Yeah, look, Man City against Liverpool is tomorrow, 12:30. Erling Haaland, 50-50 apparently to be fit. He's not trained for a couple of weeks. He injured his groin against Burnley in the FA Cup a couple of weeks ago while scoring a hat-trick. Look, it's a groin problem. He's missed international duty with Norway to World Cup qualifiers. His father, Alf Inge Haaland, the former Nottingham Forest, Leeds and Man City midfielder, said that he won't really take part in this game tomorrow unless he's been able to train. Now, he hasn't trained so far. Today is his last game to train. But what I would say, what the caveat I'll throw in there is that sometimes there's a bit of spoon-bending, mind-bending going on between managers. Maybe he is fit, maybe he's able to play. It's not unusual for a player who hasn't trained to play a match because we've had players in the past who weren't able to train because of injury problems. I'm not saying Haaland falls into that category, but certainly it's handy to have Liverpool guessing as to whether Manchester City's leading scorer is playing, and I wonder whether it's a bit of a game. We'll know more from Pep Guardiola later today. But looking through the fixtures this weekend, I mean, I can't think of a weekend, especially after internationals, when the fixtures have all got something riding on them. I mean, Arsenal playing against Leeds, implications at the top and the bottom. You've got Bournemouth and Fulham, implications at bottom and top. Brighton and Brentford, same again. Crystal Palace, Roy Hodgson's first game in charge. The only one that doesn't matter that much is Chelsea versus Aston Villa, but their fans will tell you that that's not the case.
Well,
and then
yeah.
on Sunday, West Ham, Southampton, big game at the bottom. Newcastle versus Man United as well, so a huge weekend. And we sometimes see skewed results after internationals because players are in another headspace when they're with their countries. They're playing under a different coach, different players, different tactics. They might have travelled from all around the world. Sometimes in a fixture list like that, you might see a few surprise results. So if there are any surprise results, I'll remind you of them. If there aren't, forget I said it.
Yeah, forget I said it. Quite right.
Very good.
How do we go then from the... No wonder I get confused about the sport. So we go from the Premier League...
To the IPL.
To the Indian Premier League.
Yeah, the IPL is different. That's cricket, obviously.
Yeah, well,
so that's the difference.
Good start.
Yeah, exactly. So, look, it's hugely lucrative. It's been controversial at times as well because of the interference it has in our schedule. But I want to bring in, if I can, the former England cricketer Stuart Meaker, if he can join us. Good morning to you, first of all, Stuart. I just want to ask you, tell us a little bit more about the format of the game and why it's been controversial in the past, if not so much now.
Well, I mean, it's more that it interrupts our season. It's so lucrative if you're an English player that, you know, why wouldn't you want to put your name into the hat for being able to go over and play? The problem is, like you say, the season over here is just about to start, as well as the IPL is just about to start. So if you're a gunning young England player, but you have this big jewel of a crown in terms of the money that it brings to you and your livelihood, you know, it's a very interesting tug-of-war battle that you have to sort of face. As we've seen, you know, a couple of players have actually pulled out going over to the IPL because they wanted to put their name to the hats for Ashes spots, but then some other people decide, you know what, my place is safe, so I think I'm going to stick it out and go over to the IPL and earn some good money in the meantime.
Is there anything different, Stuart, about the format compared to what we know as cricket in this country in the one day and the test game? Is there anything different about it apart from the money?
Well, yeah, of course. It's a much shorter format. It's easier and more palatable to watch. The test side, or the sort of test arena, it goes over the course of 5 days, so you have to be quite a big fan to be able to sit there and pay attention to all of it. And the one day, again, same sort of scenario. It's just a lot more sort of quantity to it. So if you're a fan of you know, sitting there for a few hours, like you are a football player, you are a rugby player, it's so much more palatable to watch just 20 overs at each side. So it grabs a lot of attention from people who you know, would potentially go off and want to watch test cricket and one day cricket.
What about the long-term future of this kind of format? Do you think we're going to see more of it? I mean, we've seen the growth of 2020, haven't we, over the last sort of 5-6 years or so in this country. Is it going to get bigger in this country to try and fend off the rewards in India?
Well, I mean, we've got our own version now in the 100, so actually, if anything, it's getting a little bit shorter. It's even shorter when you go off to places like Dubai where they have the T10. So, I mean, look, it's in terms of, you know, will it change too much? Probably not. It's our own version. We actually created it. It's a much more, like I say, shorter, more palatable watch for a lot of people. I think it's pretty much embedded in our country over here, and it's growing across the whole of Europe, which is also very important to say. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a great sort of format to watch if you're not usually a cricket fan, and it's a bit of like a gateway drug to be able to go on and watch some of the other formats like the Test cricket and like the one-day games.
Just finally, Stuart, it looks like Jofra Archer will just be playing IPL before he links up with England for the Ashes. Is that going to be problematic for England and for Jofra himself? Is that going to be the ideal preparation going into a completely different format of the game?
I would say in his case, it's a very difficult one because he's got to tread a fine line. He's had a lot of elbow issues over the last couple of years, and pushing him into playing a lot of sort of longer format heavy cricket right now might not necessarily be the best thing, because they obviously want to protect him for the Ashes. He could play a very important role for the team. But it's just good to see him back out playing some cricket. So any sort of format that he can play on on the global scale will be incredibly important for him. It would be nice to see him have some longer form going into an Ashes series, but someone like Jofra, he's a rare breed. I think he would manage it pretty darn well.
Yeah, we hope this provides some kind of preparation ahead of the Ashes, don't we? So, listen, thanks very much indeed for joining us, Stuart. That's Stuart Meeker from former England cricketer.
Yeah, well, you do have to get some good guests, Aidan.
It's not just me, it's a team effort, you know.
Ah, yeah, there you go. It's a team game.
It's easy for me on screen to take all the credit, but I'm not that kind of guy.
Oh, yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, it's all down to us, really.
Yeah, exactly. Our
Aidan.
sports contacts always come in handy.
Yeah, they do.
Thanks,
they
Aidan.
do.
It's been a little while.
I'm sure I know a sportsman somewhere.
A sportsman?
Sportsman. What's one of those?
Sure.
It's like a postman.
We do news.
I must have met one or two over the
Yeah.
years. I don't know.
That's not watching. Let me
I
tell
should
you.
say hello to my postman, actually, because I got some post off him this week. He went, "You're not going on TV looking like that, are you?" I thought, I don't look that bad, do I? But anyway, so clearly he must watch because he's never mentioned it before. So good morning, Posty.
Yeah. Give them all.
Thanks for the letters.
Look, stay with us. After this, we'll be talking about all the other stories making the news this morning in the papers with Liz Kershaw and Sean McDonald.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people. Vox Populi, Vox Dei. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel. Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back.
Oh, go on.
Yes, go on then. Welcome back.
Straight in there. She's straight in there.
Didn't have a name assigned, so I took it. Listening to Breakfast and watching it, presumably, with Stephen and Isabel this morning.
Presumably, but you might
Presumably. Well, I said listening, so I thought I'd include the TV watchers as
You very well, yes. Open to all. Let's go through the papers this morning with broadcaster and host of Blethered, Sean McDonald, and legendary broadcaster Liz Kershaw. Good morning to you both. Liz, can we kick off with The Sun, please, because it's about Paul O'Grady.
Yeah, I mean...
what a shock that was.
It was such a shock. I woke up on Wednesday morning and there were all these texts saying, sorry to hear about Paul O'Grady. I was like, what?
Yeah.
And then it dawned on me and I rummaged through the papers online. It was a shock. He was just such a special person. He was on my radio show in 1993 as Lily Savage, in full costume, even though it was radio. He used to come in and review the telly. He was so bitchy.
Yeah.
But never nasty in a kind of contradictory way. Oh, God, Liz, did you see the sight of her on Corrie the other night? She looked like, and all this stuff. But you know what was special about Paul? Loads of people have eclipsed me. But he never forgot. And he was always there to support you when things were going really well. And he was always there to help you support you when you got kicked in the teeth by Life or the BBC. And he was so honest and courageous and straight, and vivacious. I know he'd had 3 heart attacks, but last time I saw him, I hadn't seen him since last summer on the beach in Kent, and that's how I remember him now: tanned, laughing, funny. But he was just one of a kind. He was brave, and he spoke out when he thought something was wrong. He spoke out, and the exchanges by text we've had over the last couple of years, when I was resigned, the business about Ken Bruce and Paul himself. I mean, what they did to him, it was just disgusting. And I wish I'll never share it because it's personal, but if I could publish his tweets on BBC management, and his views on things like that. But the outpouring of love for him has been so genuine from the public because they loved him and they loved his Radio 2 show. And what's sad about it is I've thought, people leave their job that they love after so many years. And I was driving along yesterday and I counted 5 people that have been dropped by BBC radio management and have not lasted a year. It does really hurt people, but I just really felt it because he was a special person. And I've been asked this in the last day to go on things. I thought, no, I don't like milking. I knew him, but I thought I'm doing the papers. So if there's something in the papers about him, I'll bring it up. Anyway, this solves one clue, because what I didn't want to do was, I was in Kent. I didn't want to barge round and what's happened? Not my place. But I was like, what's happened? Because his producer had been with him in the afternoon.
Malcolm.
Yeah, Malcolm Prince, who moved down there as well. And I'm glad to read, whether or not she should have disclosed it or not, it's in the public domain now, that he died peacefully in bed next to his husband. So I'm glad he didn't, because I was thinking, oh, God, I hope he didn't get taken in an ambulance to Ashford Hospital because it's one of the worst in the country, officially, under special measures. God help you. And he'd been in there and he was always talking about how that hospital was so poor. But no, if he was going to die at 67... It was nice he was in his own place.
But peacefully is probably a lovely way to go. I mean, too young, 67's no age at all, but, I mean, unexpectedly but peacefully must be one of the best ways, I suppose.
Let's hope he didn't know anything about it.
Absolutely.
Then the Rolling Stones, I think, one of the best tributes I've seen was Mick Jagger. He said, sex and drugs and Lily Savage. The 3 things that can really... mess you up.
Let's stick with extraordinary characters, but for very, very different reasons. Sean, you've chosen the story in The Eye about Charles Bronson, who described as Britain's most notorious prisoner.
Yeah.
And, an extraordinary story and a big blow for him yesterday, but there are thresholds that have to be met if he was to be released in society, and he didn't meet them.
Yeah, absolutely. To talk about thresholds, he's been previously diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder and is naturally somewhat suspicious of other people's motives and holds authoritarian views, a psychologist told the parole hearing. I did feel a bit sorry for him. I know I'm obviously looking at it through the lens of fascination and intrigue, but he's 70 years old. I think he spent 48 years after being sentenced to I think initially just a few years for an armed robbery. In
7 years, I think it was. Yeah.
1974. He's since gone on to take, I'm not laughing, I shouldn't be laughing, 11 people hostage on 9 separate occasions. And I think the last one was a 43-hour siege in 1999. He is a real character, though. I think he told the parole board, it's no secret I've had more porridge than Goldilocks and the Three Bears, and I'm sick of it and I just want to go home. And unfortunately for him, his home is going to remain under His Majesty's pleasure.
But what I very odd is, I, in a way, don't know a lot about him. You sort of know the name, but that's... I just assumed he'd done some, really terrible things.
Well, when you think...
An armed robbery...
Gary Glitter recently was released from prison.
Yeah.
Convicted paedophile.
Absolutely.
I know he's been back in. He broke his parole conditions.
Yeah.
But then you've got someone like Charles Bronson who's, not committed a murder, not raped anybody. And life in jail.
That's it.
But, the rules are the rules.
He's a very enigmatic character, and as I say, there's an allure and an intrigue about him, but he's obviously met some threshold of criteria, for the psychologists that are evaluating him to say, well, you probably pose more of a risk to the public if we let you out.
Yeah. Well, you've got to trust their judgment on that, but it's it's odd that he was first convicted when I was born.
Yeah.
And he's still in there.
I thought you were born in 85.
Oh, yeah, right. Pull the other one. What are you after? If only. Liz, can we have a look at the Times and car makers being told they've got to sell more electric cars, basically?
Yes, people are already finding that the value of second-hand electric cars has plummeted.
Really?
Yeah, the demand for it's plummeted, thus the price. And one of the reasons is the lack of charging points. We should have 300,000 and there are only 30,000 so far. I know that my son's now got an electric hybrid. Before he ventures out, he has to check the postcode of where he's going to find out if there's charging points available, because in order to run it on petrol, you have to start it and set off on the battery.
Right.
And it uses a lot more fuel per miles per gallon, fewer, because you're carrying the weight of this battery. So it's all a bit premature, I think. And this drive for electricity is, I think, quite premature, because we don't have the means to make it. We don't have the nuclear power plants. We're still scrambling around using coal and wood chips imported from places like Brazil, which is hypocritical, to fire up our electricity production. And the other thing in the news this week tied to this was that the government wants more of our power in our homes to come from electricity and less from gas. So you won't be cooking on gas, you won't be able to have a gas boiler. And it's all to do with carbon emissions. As I say, it's slightly hypocritical because electricity doesn't come from nowhere. But I also think if we're all tied to the grid for electric and we've all got smart meters, which is what they want to encourage, then they can switch us off, can't they? That's why they want to be able to organise the grid so they can turn it down here and turn it up there and turn it down at different times, which might seem practical. But I don't want to live in where somebody is sat there and controlling whether I can...
You wouldn't know the difference.
Would I not?
No, you wouldn't know. You wouldn't know that. Look, I'm all for electric cars. I would love an electric car.
Why didn't you get one then?
Because the infrastructure isn't there.
Exactly, I've just said that.
Well, exactly,
yeah,
but that's the problem. And also the battery capacity isn't there for what I would want to use it for. So I have to stop. But it's. I mean, oddly enough, was sat next to a lady yesterday who was busy chatting to somebody else, but I was overhearing and saying she's got an electric car. And the problem is all the you go to half the charging points and they're not working.
The other thing about electric cars, somebody came round to my house the other day. Now, you wouldn't come round to my house, would you, and say, can I just siphon out the petrol out of your lawnmower and put it into my car?
Yeah.
But they come and they go, can I plug my car in?
Yeah.
So...
but, you know, they say necessity is the mother of invention, and if they do set these quotas, these deadlines, you know, maybe these developments will speed along, the batteries will get lighter.
Yeah.
We are an electric car kind of guy?
No, just petrol just now. I would get one, but yeah, I'm echoing the same as you guys. There. It just has to be set up and ready to go.
Sean, let's turn to the Times, shall we? I know you want to talk about what's been a big week for Scotland, and Hamza Yousaf, he's braced for his first electoral test now after this COVID shock suspension from Parliament for one of his members.
Yeah, straight in at the deep end. So to give viewers a wee bit of a rundown, we have Margaret Ferrier. She is the MP for Rutherglen. She travelled, I think she knew that she had symptoms, she had taken a COVID test, and she spoke in Parliament, and then she got the train back at a time when, we were in a very precarious position. We didn't know the full extent or the possibilities of the outcome of infecting other people. Hamza Yousaf is basically calling for a by-election. I think he's confident that they could retain the Rutherglen seat, but I think he sees for the integrity of the party, and marked as it has been wrongdoing. He is criticised. We've got Alan Dorrans, the SNP MP. He was on the committee and he voted with Conservative members to suspend her for just 9 days. I think Hamza thought it should have been a lot more. That was a point that was echoed as well by a local political commentator, Sophie McLaren, who's certainly got her ear to the ground and knows what constituents there are after. It is a big test because while I don't see a huge Labour resurgence, there is more of an appetite. I think we're on the cusp of a Labour government at the next general election, and that could swing some middle ground voters. So it is a massive test. It's a bit of a gamble, but I think for the integrity of the parties, it's the right decision.
Yeah.
I think there should definitely be a by-election, so that it depends. That'll be triggered if I think 10% or more of the constituents basically call for her to be ousted. And that one hangs in the balance.
It will be very interesting to see how that plays out. Sean, Liz, we've got to leave it there.
Thank you.
Good to see you this morning. Thank you very much indeed.
Right, now, while a night out can often help to alleviate feelings of isolation, provide an opportunity to spend time with friends, sometimes things can actually take quite a sinister turn and do the opposite.
New research has found that more than half of people aged 18 to 30 feel unsafe or uncomfortable on a night out. Another 43% admitting to have been left on their own in a bar or club.
Well, this morning we're joined by the founder and CEO, and I should say award-winning CEO of Nightcap, Sarah Willingham. Good morning to you, Sarah. Always good to see you. Look,
Great to see
as a
you
woman, as a professional in this industry as well, and I believe as somebody who has herself been spiked, this must really resonate with you.
This is work that really matters to me and to my team. You know, we have 36 bars now. We started Nightcap 2 years ago, and we've now got to a size where I feel, although we're still a small proportion of the late night bars that are out there, that actually, if we can shout loud enough about this, we can make a difference. And frankly, if we change one person's outcome by this campaign, then we'll be happy with what we've done. And this is about not just saying to bars and bar owners, actually, we need to make sure that we do as much as we possibly can to make people feel safe and be safe within our bars. So, for example, we have trained all of our teams in noticing the difference between people who might have been drunk or who might have been spiked. We'll make sure that there's always phone chargers there, which is something that's really important. We asked our customer base, what do you need from us? So we'll make sure that there's phone chargers there. We'll make sure that people have water if they need it. Make sure that people don't leave on their own. But the message is also bigger than that. It's about saying to people, like, have each other's back, actually. We are a lot safer together. Don't leave your mate. You know, I think it's scary when nearly half of the people in this research have sat there and said, yeah, I was left on my own. I couldn't find my friends. I don't really remember how I got home. You know, actually, we want people to be able to go out and have a great time, let loose, you know, have this brilliant night out, but know that not just we've got their back, but also their mates have got their back.
Yeah. Look, what happened to you, Sarah?
So I was a long time ago, because I'm getting older now, but I was in my 20s and I was with a friend and we were we'd had one drink sat at a bar, just the first drink. And actually, we were lucky that it was our first drink so that we knew straight away that something was happening. We were actually drinking a vodka orange. And I remember saying to my friend I was like, something's happening. And I could feel it. We still do not remember how we got back to our room. We can remember grabbing each other and bouncing off the walls. We were away, actually. We were abroad at the time. And we woke up the following morning, and I cannot tell you the state that we were in. Now, we were safe. Nobody got hold of us. There were just the two of us. But it's really terrifying. It was one drink, and we lost complete control of ourselves and our body. And it's very, very, very different than having a few drinks.
Yeah.
Now, we were lucky. And I think it's important that we as friends and also as bar owners are educated in what that looks like. And if you do feel unsafe, bars should have spiking kits behind the bar to say, you know what, let me just test that. But at the same time, people behind the bar should be able to recognise my drinks shouldn't behave like that. That's cloudy, or why is that frothing? Or, so they start to recognise that, because it does happen no matter how much we try to protect it. There will always be people out there that will target, it's not just women, will target somebody and want them to be in this state. And we've just got to make sure that we have each other's back and we look out for one another.
Just very briefly, because we're almost out of time. I mean, obviously, people can take some responsibility themselves and go out and watch their drinks and keep an eye on it all, keep their hand on it. And that's a sensible thing to do. But the problem is, of course, that then takes away some of the pleasure of just having a carefree night out.
Yeah, I think so. And that's what we're trying to do here, is to say, look, be aware, because it's not just about spiking, actually, at all. I mean, spiking, of course, exists, but it is, in all honesty, it's the minority of the real issues that come just from maybe sometimes having a little bit too much to drink and leaving somewhere and not really knowing how to get home. And are you safe? And I think that this is about, this is a bigger campaign that we are safer together. So if you don't feel good in an environment, you should be able to go and speak to somebody in that establishment that is sober, that will look after you. You make a pact with your mates before you go out. You're like, whatever happens tonight, let's have a great time, but don't leave me. Make sure I get home okay. These are messages that I tell my kids, if they're going out, and my friends' kids. And that's what we've always done as friends. And so I think it's shocking to me when you hear that half of the people don't have that with their friends, that we're getting left. And that's not okay.
No, it's not. Sarah, as always, really good to see you. Thanks very much indeed.
Great to see you. Thank you.
It's always with the young as well, isn't it? The risks we all take. I took extraordinary risks when I was younger, leaving and going home on my own. Wouldn't do that now, but you think you're immortal when you're young. Look, we have to leave it there. We'll have more for you in just a moment. First of all, here's your Friday forecast.
Hello there. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Metaverse. I'm Jonathan Vaughtry. It is certainly a windy start to Friday for southern coast of England and Wales. That's due to low pressure that has been tracking its way through overnight, and this squeeze in the isobars here is really providing gales severe for a time. We could see gusts of 60, maybe up to 70 miles per hour through this early part of the morning. But underneath the main low pressure centre, winds are much lighter across many other areas of the UK. This is being accompanied by rain, certainly some persistent rain across areas of the southwest, particularly Devon and Cornwall, 15 to 25 millimetres building up, and there is a rain warning in force. Other areas of showery rain and drizzle persisting in many other locations, particularly across eastern coastal areas, as we see cloud pushing its way in from the North Sea. And where that cloud really persists, we could see some sea fog and temperatures not climbing much higher than 9 degrees Celsius. But a little brighter for western Scotland, and that's where we could see temperatures climb to around 15 degrees in Oban. As we move throughout to the overnight period, there's this trailing band of rain that's going to be persistent across, again, southwestern areas of England, Wales and up into Northern Ireland. That's going to linger throughout much of the night and will remain in place as you wake up on Saturday morning as well. The cloud, pretty much persistent for many of us, but that will hold temperatures up a fair amount. Just some of those clearer spells across Scotland may see temperatures drop down into mid or low single figures. Saturday then looks like a pretty cloudy one for many of us, still with this band of rain in the west, but further patches of drizzle pushing into eastern coastal areas as well. Best of the brightness, northwest England up into western areas of Scotland, where we could see a few brighter, sunnier spells in there. Temperatures around, if not slightly below average for the time of year. Again, highs between 9, maybe 14 degrees Celsius in places. High pressure looks to build as we move into Sunday, and so that's certainly looking to be the better half of the weekend. We just need to watch out for if that will stick around into the new working week or if other fronts will make their way in. Bye-bye.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Co.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you.
She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Co. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel.
The The UK has announced its biggest trade deal since Brexit.
Good morning to you. It's 9 o'clock. It's Friday, the 31st of March. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Isabel. These are your top stories.
Britain has signed a deal to join a major Indo-Pacific trade bloc stretching from Canada to Australia. The Prime Minister says it puts the UK in a prime position and will lead to a £1.8 billion boost to the economy.
Donald Trump has been indicted on criminal charges relating to an alleged hush money payment to an adult film actress. He's the first former US president to face criminal charges in court.
Rescue volunteers are bracing themselves for a busy Easter holiday as tourists try out their navigational skills and get a bit lost in the process. We'll be finding out how to stay safe in the mountains. God, that'd be lovely.
Take a survival bag.
And a whistle.
Always the way.
A whistle.
A whistle.
Part of it.
Yeah.
Always good.
I mean, a phone might be more useful.
Maybe.
Well,
sometimes you don't get phone signal in the mountains.
No, this is true.
Yeah, or if you get separated from your group, you've got youngsters, whistle. We always went at Easter to the Cairngorms, and my dad would always give us a whistle and a silver foil blanket.
Yes.
That was essential.
Certainly
We knew
is.
how to have fun.
Yeah, she had a lovely time. Look, if you've got any thoughts on that or anything else we're talking about today, drop us an email, gbviews@gbnews.uk. Now, it's Britain's biggest trade deal since leaving the EU.
Yes, the UK has agreed to join the Indo-Pacific trading bloc, known catchily as the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership.
Well, the government says joining the group will boost UK exports, cutting tariffs on things like cheese, cars and whisky.
Well, joining us now is the Minister for Business and Trade, Nigel Huddleston. This is a big coup for the UK and a chance to celebrate. How hard has it been to get this over the line?
Well, it's been a difficult challenge, 2 years of negotiations, because it's such a high standard group of countries. But I mean, this is a really big moment for us because we'll be joining a club of some of the fastest growing nations in the world, and also really important with this Indo-Pacific tilt. Of course, we've left the EU, but there's so many other opportunities out there, and there's many of them in the Indo-Pacific region.
What difference will this make for the UK? I mean, we had trade relations with a lot of these countries individually already. So what does being in this group, how does that make a difference?
It does add a lot. I mean, we are talking about billions and billions of pounds of incremental GDP. That will mean more jobs, more economic activity, more growth. Some of the nations we have trading relationships with at the moment, but not all of them. Malaysia, for example, this will be the first deal that we've got. Plus, this deal expands beyond just goods into lots of service areas as well, and that's really, really important because, of course, that's huge for our growth because we're an 80% service economy.
Yeah, and look, you know, any growth is welcome, but we've got a long way still to go, haven't we? I mean, there's kind of economic consensus that we're 4% poorer since leaving the European Union, and this is set to give us 0.8% of GDP over 10 years. So not a huge amount in, you know, crude terms.
Well, even that relatively small amount, which, by the way, was based on numbers estimated a few years ago before we knew what the deal would look at, would still be billions of pounds of additional revenue. And, of course, this is a trading deal. This is a trading bloc. This is not the EU. This is not a political and economic union. This is a trading system, and that's where the huge benefits will come from.
What about China in all of this? I mean, there are questions as to whether China will want to join this group. From a financial point of view, you can see the sense in it, but politically, that's slightly difficult, isn't it?
Well, we've only just joined this group, so obviously, you know, there will be other countries joining, and we will have a say in that. But as I said, the bar was very, very high in terms of what you need to do and how you need to operate in order to join this club, and that will apply to future nations as well. But it goes beyond China. There are many other countries also interested in joining, and we're really excited about that because there's huge opportunities for growth.
Well, to be clear, though, I mean, we've seen the United States sort of turning away from China. What would our position be if China did want to join the group? And I mean, it's very interesting you say this isn't a political bloc, but, you know, it's impossible to remove trade from politics, isn't it?
Well, and indeed, and as part of the integrated review that we announced recently, we said that, you know, we do realise we will need to trade with China. They're a really important player in the global economy and have a huge role in various supply chains. But of course, we need to balance that with our security interests as well. And that is the case now, and that will be the case in the future. But we're not there yet. I mean, we've just joined, literally finished negotiations today for CPTPP. So discussions for other countries that may join, as I said, it goes way beyond China, are really for another day. And we will always take careful considerations into account. And as I said, it's balancing trade with security.
But for post-Brexit Britain, I mean, as important as this may be, I mean, politically here and economically, it's only got to be a first step, hasn't it? I mean, what else is on the table? Where else do we need to go to be the independent trading nation that we wanted to be?
Well, of course, we secured the deal with the EU, which was huge. The Trade and Cooperation Agreement itself is a really large free trade agreement. But we've also secured agreements with 70 other nations, as well as the EU, and are currently in negotiation with other major economies, such as India, and also upgrading trade deals as well with countries such as Israel and Mexico and others. So we've got these trading block deals, but we're also doing direct free trade agreements as well. At the same time, it's not just about free trade agreements. We're working country by country, subsector by subsector sometimes, in removing barriers to trade, and that's my role here at the Department for Business and Trade. So the free trade deals are really, really important, but it's not the only thing we're doing to expand our trade. But what we're doing is focusing where we've got this real growth and this real opportunity. And CPTPP is key to that, because more than half of the global growth over the next few decades will be in the Indo-Pacific region. So we have to be there. We have to have these relationships. We have to be present. And actually, I'm really, really pleased that we're the first European nation to do so.
Look, you know, diplomacy important in all of this. We've had the royals in Europe trying to exercise soft power, improve our relations with the European Union. We've had Rishi Sunak managing to elicit great terms from the European Union in his Windsor framework. Where does the CPTPP leave our relationship with Europe? I mean, they could feasibly be quite miffed about this, couldn't they?
I don't think they'll be miffed about it, because they recognise the pragmatism of the UK since we've left the EU. And it's about Europe plus. It's about Europe plus the rest of the world. I mean, remember, we're in a world now where it's not about shipping widgets from country A to country B, physical products all the time, as important as they are. We're an 80% service economy, and we have to seek opportunities right the way around the world. And with the digital developments, it doesn't really matter whether they're right next door or at the other side of the planet, because we can trade in a really fluid, easy way digitally in a way that we couldn't a few years ago. And that creates huge opportunities, in particular for the UK services sector, which is admired around the world. So we will always trade with the EU. They'll always be a really important partner for us in trade, diplomatic and cultural terms, and military as well. But the rest of the world is out there, and now we need to grasp the opportunities that are there as well as within the EU.
People watching and listening may either like this or they may not. They'll email in and tell us, Minister, I've no doubt about that. But the bottom line with all of this thing is we don't appreciate these things until we start to see a difference in our lives. Will that happen with this?
It will, and many businesses very, very quickly will see that instead of paying tariffs on the goods that they've exported to these regions, and I say in particular where we don't currently have deals, such as Malaysia, those tariffs will either drop immediately or over time. And we're talking about 99% of goods being exported with no tariffs, the CPTPP. So that will make a really big difference. And also in things like services, it will be easier to recognise professional qualifications, to set up services in these countries, easier for business travel as well. So there will be a really meaningful difference very, very quickly that will build over time, and we genuinely will see an increase in economic activity in this region over time. As I say, strategically, it's so important to us. So yes, we've got an announcement today, and I know, you know, people will want to see where the action is, but it will be coming, and we can be very confident about that.
Okay.
Minister, really good to see you this one. Can I just ask, how long have you had to spend in front of the mirror going CPTTP to get it off so quickly?
It took a while, and I have to say, when you announced it earlier on as well and got the full name correct, that was fantastic. I thought what you might challenge me is asking me the 11 nations in it as well, but which is taken some time. But,
we'll let you off the
hook. That is great.
On that
but yeah, I mean, maybe the name might need to change at some point, but we're very pleased to be part of it.
Let's hope so. Minister, very good to talk to you this morning.
Yeah.
Thank you.
At the moment, it's got the accolade of being the biggest post-Brexit trade deal, and that's a lot snappier than saying the comprehensive and progressive agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, isn't it, Olivia Utley?
I just can't get the letters in the right order. I've said it so many times, I keep getting it wrong.
Yeah, I mean, the minister's saying, look, this is very important for the UK. Financially, not yet. That's the problem.
Financially, not yet. It's only thought that it's going to add 0.08% to GDP over the next 10 years. But the soft power really is very, very important. It'll help us, you talked about China earlier, it will help us diversify our supply chains, which, as we know, are too concentrated in China. We are too reliant on China. This will mean that we can have some of our supply chains in some of these 11 countries. It will also mitigate against Chinese influence in that Indo-Pacific region. We know that that's a problem, China gaining influence in these countries. And while China remains out of this partnership, and it doesn't look like China would be let in anytime soon, Britain being part of it will help to sort of keep an eye on what's going on with those relationships. And as the minister said there, it is important for just showing that Britain is sort of serious on the global stage. So yes, of course, in pure numeric terms, it doesn't mean very much. And we did have trade agreements already with 9 out of the 11 countries in this partnership. But as a statement of intent, it's very important indeed.
Yeah, and look, it's worth just listing the countries. Old friends like Canada, Australia, New Zealand, big trading nations like Japan, Mexico and Vietnam, and then a few that, perhaps we haven't done much business with in the past, but I'm sure we will do lots with now. Chile, Peru, Malaysia, Singapore, and then Brunei. And I have to say, Brunei jumped out to me because obviously they've got quite questionable human rights in all of this. And the minister at pains there to say this isn't a political bloc, it's not like the European Union. But are we now saying, we're open to do business with all sorts of different countries, but even those with questionable human rights?
Yeah, it's a very tricky line to draw because, of course, this bloc isn't anything like the EU. It isn't about closer political harmony. They don't have their own court or anything like that. It is purely about trade. But as you say, obviously, we do draw a line somewhere in terms of trading. And we know that there are plenty of problems with our trading relationship with China. There have been issues raised over the years about, obviously, the genocide, the Uyghur genocide going on in China and whether Britain can, in all conscience, trade freely with China. So we might see similar issues being raised over the next few years about that relationship with Brunei.
OK. Olivia, thank you very much indeed.
Now, Donald Trump has been indicted by a grand jury in New York, which makes him the first former US president to face criminal charges.
It's after an investigation into alleged hush money payments given to adult film star Stormy Daniels during his 2016 election campaign.
Well, as you might expect, Trump has defended himself. He says he's the most innocent man in US history.
OK, let's talk to the chair of Republicans Overseas UK, Greg Swenson. Greg, as always, it's good to see you this morning. Look, if there is legally a case to answer, he should answer it, shouldn't he?
Sure, absolutely. I think he's happy to do that. And in fact, if anything, this really helps President Trump in his campaign because, now he'll look like a victim. So, yeah, on one hand, his personal behavior has exposed him to criticism, quite obviously. But by the Democrats doing this, the radical progressive left in the form of Alvin Bragg, that excess will actually help Trump and make him look like the victim. So I think, the president is more than happy to get involved in this. It's like the O.J. Simpson trial do-over.
Look, do you think that something... I don't want to speculate about the outcome of all of this, but, let's go over exactly what he's being accused of, because it isn't illegal to ask somebody to be quiet about something. It's probably not that unusual, particularly in politics, even over here. But in this particular instance, it's alleged that he used money and silenced this porn star, and that money was in some way not declared and used as well in his campaign in 2016. Is that correct?
Yeah, it is correct, Isabel. Absolutely. But I think that you got the facts right, but I think it's really a bit of a stretch to indict on something like that. Connecting the dots into a campaign finance violation, falsifying business records, which is for the most part a misdemeanor in the state of New York. It's really a stretch. And so, again, I think the merits of the case are really weak. And the Democrats know that. Alvin Bragg surely knows it because his predecessor, Cyrus Vance, as well as the federal Justice Department, declined to prosecute the same case. So, there's really very little likelihood that this would survive an appeal, an appellate court. Now, they could get 12 jurors to convict in New York because 85% of the juror pool in New York voted for Biden, and they particularly hate Trump, especially in Manhattan, not as much in the outer boroughs. But, so look, even if they got 12 jurors to convict, I doubt this would pass any appeals court. But that's not the point. They don't really think they can convict him. They just want it to elevate President Trump in the primary process because they want to run against him in 2024. After the Mar-a-Lago raid, his numbers went from +9 over DeSantis prior to the raid to +39. And that's going to happen here. The fundraising machine is kicked in for President Trump, and it's elevated him to the front page. It will also discourage the Republican nominees in DeSantis, Nikki Haley, Mike Pence. It will discourage them from talking about the issues and the absolute failure of the Biden administration. Instead, they'll be talking about Trump and this trial. So it's brilliant, dirty politics. There's nothing illegal about what the Democrats are doing. It's just a little sleazy.
What do you make of it as someone obviously working within the Republican Party within all of this? I mean, do people still buy? I mean, what struck me in all, whatever the rights and wrongs of this prosecution, whether it should be going ahead or not, put that to one side. When Donald Trump comes out and says, "I'm the most innocent man in US history," well, that's nonsense, obviously. Do people still have an appetite for that sort of spin, if you like, or do they get bored of it now? They're sort of thinking, well, we need a sensible politician, a real politician.
Yes. Stephen, it's a great question. And, this could backfire or double backfire. I mean, on one hand, as I said, it will elevate Trump. It'll put him on the front page. He'll get all the attention, which he loves. But sure, there might be some Trump fatigue in the voter base, and perhaps this will elevate people that, like DeSantis, Nikki Haley, Mike Pence, Mike Pompeo, that, are a little bit more careful with their language and a little more deliberate in how they speak. So that could be the case. In 2015 and 16, it surely wasn't the case. And Trump was able to get all the attention in the campaign. And that's one of the reasons that he won. But, maybe there will be some Trump fatigue. It's difficult to predict. The one thing we can be sure of is this is going to be, the political ramifications here will probably be negative or destructive, but also really unpredictable. So who knows?
Can I just ask you a yes/no question, a bit of a cruel one, but I'll put you on the spot. Does he have your support?
In this trial, absolutely, without a doubt, because it's a complete abuse of the prosecutorial
yes
process.
Or no was the...
I'll tell you what, Greg, that wasn't what she was asking. In terms of whether he should be, the GOP's candidate.
Personally, I would prefer Ron DeSantis or one of the other candidates.
Interesting.
So bring back Trump policies, but with a little bit more careful delivery.
Interesting. Always good to talk to you. Chair of the Republicans Overseas, Greg Swenson.
Thanks, Stephen. Thanks, Isabel.
Good to see you.
Great to be here.
It's interesting. He's a straight talker, is Greg. Whether you agree with what he's saying or not, but the fact he then says, actually, no, I would rather see Ron DeSantis. It's interesting.
Yeah, he hasn't yet declared. That's the big thing. And, will this deter him from perhaps declaring if he thinks it's a runaway success now for Trump? It is fascinating, American politics, always.
Isn't it just?
Fascinating and slightly alarming.
Yeah. Now, back to things over here, but not political, of course, because King Charles and Queen Camilla are wrapping up their much-praised state visit to Germany.
Well, later today, the monarch will be travelling from Berlin to Hamburg, where he'll visit a memorial for victims of Allied bombings during World War II.
OK, let's touch base then with our royal reporter, Cameron Walker, who's been following the visit very closely. How's it all been going, Cameron?
It's been going pretty well, I think, Stephen, both here in Germany and indeed in the United Kingdom. The King is featured on a number of the front pages here in Germany this morning because he became the first British monarch in history to address the German Bundestag yesterday, that is the German Parliament. Now, in that speech, he teased ahead what is happening on the final day of his state visit here to Hamburg. He said, "We will once again stand with the people of Germany in solemn remembrance." And that is because later on today, the King and Queen Consorts will be here at St. Nikolai Church in Hamburg for a short ceremony and a wreath-laying ceremony. There's also a choir rehearsing who will be performing in front of a King and Queen Consort later. Now, this church is in ruins, and that is because it was bombed by the Allies during the Second World War in 1943. So this year marks the 80th anniversary of that bombing campaign, and now it is a permanent memorial. So today is all about reconciliation. The King and Queen Consorts will also be visiting the Kindertransport Memorial just outside the train station here, and it commemorates the 10,000 or so Jewish children who were in a British-led campaign given safe passage to the United Kingdom in the 1930s to escape the Nazis. Elsewhere today, we've got the King is also going to be on a green boat tour in the harbour in Hamburg, looking at an electrolyzing site, which will help generate electricity. The Queen Consort will be at a local school. She is expected to read to a number of young children alongside the President of Germany's wife, Frau Bundenbender. She's going to be reading the Gruffalo, and of course the Queen is very into literacy. She believes that if children get into reading and enjoy reading at a young age, that's really going to help their life chances and future prospects. So she's taking the opportunity to visit a local school here. And then to round off this entire 3-day states visits, the King and Queen Consorts will be at a reception with 1,000 people here in Hamburg. Local youth groups, civil society organisations and stakeholders for Hamburg will be there. But this whole 3-day trip is all about strengthening ties with one of our closest European neighbours, Germany. It's the UK government's advice that Buckingham Palace decides where to send the King and Queen Consort for their first state visit of the new reign. Of course, the first time the King has been to a foreign country since he came to the throne. So perhaps British officials thought it was appropriate that the King and Queen Consorts visit a European nation first, rather than a Commonwealth nation, which is what Queen Elizabeth II did following her coronation in 1953. Today is all about reconciliation, remembering the world wars, but of course it's all off the back of it. It's all as the war in Ukraine continues to rage on, another key theme of this state visit.
Thank you very much, Cameron. And whilst Cameron was braving the elements there in Hamburg, it was looking much more clement, wasn't it, in Berlin? We were watching live pictures during that of the King meeting with President Frank-Walter Steinmeier for the final day of that state visit. And as Cameron was saying there, it seems to have been a huge success.
It does seem to have been. Gone very well. I was just wondering, is Camilla, the Queen, I should say, is she reading the Gruffalo in English or German?
Gosh, there's a challenge because, you know, of course, King Charles has been doing wonderful fluently speaking German whilst he's been there, hasn't he? Which has been really impressive.
Well, yes.
Very impressive. Of course, he is.
More than we're struggling. We're struggling to get English out. But anyway, there you go. Don't go anywhere. We've got lots coming up for you, including the mountain rescue teams are incredible groups of volunteers. Phenomenal people, but they are issuing a warning if you're going to be an Easter holiday walker. We'll tell you more in just a minute.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things. We've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing with the audience very much at the heart of it. it like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison? I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB+ radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories, controversies and issues.
With us four, plus a special guest.
It's 5 times the opinion, 5 times the debate, and 5 times the fun. The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You could wink at the end. I can't Britain's wink. Listening.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
(9:28), good morning to you. You're watching and listening to Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Isabel.
Now, we are talking about rescue volunteers. They are bracing themselves for really busy Easter holidays. Tourists often try out their navigational skills during the break and get a little bit lost in the process.
Yeah, which can be extremely dangerous. Mountain Rescue in England and Wales were involved in more than, well, very nearly, actually, 3,500 call-outs last year, mostly because of inexperienced map reading, rogue GPS apps leading people off the path, that sort of thing.
Well, joining us now is the Managing Director of the Leisure at Ordnance Survey, Nick Giles OBE. Good morning to you, Nick. Look, there's no substitute, is there, for a good old-fashioned map and making sure you know how to use it with a compass?
Good morning. No, there isn't. And actually, it's a very simple skill to learn. You can teach yourself map reading in about 10 minutes with some very simple guides. It's relatively basic. I know that opening one up and looking at all of the hieroglyphics that are contained on a map can sometimes be a bit daunting, but actually, once you get your head around it, it makes a lot of sense, and that can save your life if you do get stuck.
It is all about the basics in this sort of thing. We love to get out in the wild, we love to get up on the fells, but actually if we don't plan properly, whether it's making sure we've got a hard copy of a map or, you know, the things like, you know, the right clothing, survival bags, all that sort of thing, I mean, this can be a lethal thing. People die on the mountains.
Yes, and always plan ahead, especially if you're going off the beaten track. I mean, at this time of year, we're coming out of the winter hibernation, and we see around about an 80% increase in terms of people getting out and walking and exploring the great outdoors, which is fantastic and something that we're all about. We're all about helping more people to get outside more often. So that's great, but make sure you plan ahead. Check the weather. The weather can change instantaneously almost. And we've all been caught out on a hot summer's day when all of a sudden the heavens open and you're soaked to the skin. So just think about what that weather could do. Look at the local weather forecast. If you're going out into the mountains, there's a fantastic mountain forecast that's available on the Met Office. So take advantage of that. And pack a rucksack. Take some stuff with you. Take some sort of bare essentials. If you're going to venture out after dark, particularly outside of a town or city, actually nighttime is black. You cannot see your hand in front of your face. So you need some form of torch. Make sure you've got some extra layers just in case you do get stuck and you can keep yourself warm. And obviously, having things like mobile technology can also help you. It can also help navigate in terms of and position exactly where you are. So we'd recommend the OS Maps app, which will give you some real in-depth mapping, all the sort of mapping that you get from the infamous sort of pink and orange maps that Ordnance Survey are famous for, is all contained in there. But it also gives you the ability to do a 3D fly-through of exactly where you're going, which then enables you to really understand the lay of the land, the landscape that you're going through, the challenges that you may face along the way. So planning ahead is essential. Stay safe. Tell someone where you're going as well, because then if you do get into trouble and you're not back in the time that you're expected to be back for, then actually someone is there to call for help for you.
Yeah. It all seems really obvious, but perhaps sometimes it isn't. I once got into, well, not difficulties, but it was just a bit of a cautionary tale, really. I went for a walk up Penny Fan in the Brecon Beacons, and the weather at the base where we were staying was glorious. So we were in T-shirts and shorts. It was a lovely spring, hot day. But when we got to the top, it was fog. I mean, you couldn't see beyond a metre, and we got disorientated. We were really cold. Everything was fine. We got down the mountain fine. But it was a real wake-up call to me, really, that actually you think you're OK, you're dressed appropriately for the weather, but the weather at your destination might be quite different from where you are and all the rest of it. And I suppose it's those sorts of things that can get people into spot a bother.
Yeah, the weather at the top of a mountain can be very different from at the bottom. And the temperature difference alone, I mean, if you're going out, you're starting at a T-shirt at sort of sea level almost, then by the time you get to up 1,000 feet, then it will be very different. You're also starting to get into the cloud bank there. So if a cloud comes in, that's where you get the thick fog. You just cannot see your hand in front of your face. So there are tools and tips to be able to actually navigate through that. The simplest way is to actually get your smartphone out and look at the OS Maps app and see exactly where you are, which will pinpoint you really accurately on the map. And it will even give you the orientation that you're facing so that actually you can follow a path, even if you're doing that virtually and you can't see it very well down the mountain. And I've been caught out like that before and actually used that to get myself to safety.
Yeah, well, look, it's all about those precautions and being, planning ahead, as you say. Nick Giles, really good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. And I tell you what, part of the reason you don't want to get lost, you don't want to get into trouble, is not only for your own well-being and safety, but if you do have to call out mountain rescue, you're putting other people in. And these are volunteers who, I mean, I've known people in mountain rescue coming from the lakes, and they just down tools and off they go. They're incredible people who do that sort of work. And they won't be going anywhere without a map and an app.
Speaking of maps, my other top tip, if you've got a hard copy of a map and say your phone battery dies for whatever reason, we're talking proper crisis, always have a plastic envelope to keep it in. Because the number of times people get caught out in the rain, and before you know it, if you're looking at a particular part of the map or it's on a fold where you right at the crucial point, it can get worn through. So that is a top tip. Make sure you have a plastic envelope for your map. Yeah,
and you meant to renew your maps quite often as well, because they do get worn.
Make me want to go for a walk, though.
Oh yeah, good old hike.
Stretch my legs.
Yeah, it's very good thing to do. But don't do it without planning first. You want a flask of tea as well. I mean, that's just sensible.
Kendal mint cake. That's from where?
Kendal mint cake.
From whence you came?
Well, indeed, yes, indeed. Gives you a bit of energy. Well, it's just sugar, isn't it?
Yeah, a Mars bar will do.
Minty sugar. But, you can't go wrong with a bit of Kendal mint cake. There you go.
There you go, our top tips.
Now, coming up for you, he rose to fame on Neighbours. We've had him on the show before, so we're very excited to have him back. He's now preparing to release his first solo album. talk to him on the other side of this break.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Monday to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people. Vox Populi, Vox Dei. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel. Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Isabel.
And we've got sports broadcaster Aidan McGee here with us this morning. Aidan, good morning, good morning.
Morning again.
Let's kick off. Let's have a look at the Premier League again, should we? Because it's... there's a lot of sort of significant matches going on this weekend.
Yeah, it's rare after an international break. Normally, you'd come back after the international break and the fixtures would be... You wouldn't get too many top six clashes. But Man City-Liverpool's a big one tomorrow. Will Erling Haaland play for Manchester City or not? It's about a 50-50 chance at the moment. He had a minor groin injury sustained against Burnley 2 weeks ago in the FA Cup when he scored a hat-trick. He missed the 2 World Cup qualifiers for his country, Norway. His father, who was a footballer himself, Alf Inge Haaland, he said that he's not going to play tomorrow unless he's one of those. He said he's one of those players who needs to train beforehand. So it's his last chance to train today. Whether that'll be enough of training to play tomorrow, but it's absolutely pivotal because Liverpool need to go there to keep their champion and win to keep their Champions League hopes alive. If City lose, then it lets in Arsenal later in the day. But I do wonder if it's a bit of mind bending by the manager. It's handy for Liverpool to be guessing leading up to the game whether Haaland's going to be playing. Don't forget he's got 42 goals this season. And then we've got some other decent games as well. Arsenal obviously in action against Leeds. But every other game, I mean, Crystal Palace, Leicester, that's Roy Hodgson's first game back in charge at the age of 75 years old. We've got Bournemouth against Fulham, which has repercussions or has implications at the top and bottom. So it's rare, as you say, that we get a lot of fixtures with something riding on them.
And Aidan, an interesting financial story. I mean, the heart doesn't exactly bleed, but according to this review of Man United's debt that Amount has to pay its players, it's down, a decrease of 20.9%.
Yeah, so they've managed. I mean, there's the elephant in the room there is Cristiano Ronaldo. He's off the books now, so the wages have come down, but the overall debt that the club owes is just shy of £1 billion. Now, United aren't really used to that. Don't forget, in the 90s up until the mid-2000s, so the Glazers takeover, they weren't used to owners coming in and leveraging debt. The club is so commercially strong, they didn't have to worry about that kind of thing. But the fact is, if someone wants to buy it now for £6-7 billion, they're going to have to borrow money. So it's debt, but it's kind of a mortgage debt. You know, we don't go around saying we're this amount of money, this amount in debt. It's just something you saddle as you go along. But it wasn't all bad news anyway. I mean, they're not in the Champions League this season, so that accounts for some of the drop. But they were back in the Champions League next year, you would think. As you say, the player wages have been brought under control as well. The matchday revenue's up, their sponsorships up as well. So it wouldn't take long to get United back into a situation where they're comfortably in profit. In terms of the takeover, well, the Premier League updated their owners and directors test yesterday. They tightened it to say that anyone with a human rights abuses on their record or any other things like gay rights and stuff like that, they would not be able to take over a club. Tracy Crouch, the former sports minister, has said this is all smoke and mirrors.
Why is it smoke and mirrors?
Because I think that with the Qatari bid, Qatari have got significant black dots against their name, but I think they'll get round it by having an individual, as in Sheikh Jassim, buying the club and not technically being linked to the Qatari state. We all know it's nonsense, but that's how they'll circumvent the rules. And they'll look at one individual and say, well, what's his charge sheet? Oh, no, he's done nothing wrong, he's OK. And they'll circumvent it in that manner. And I think it will go ahead.
I always come back to Harrods on that because, you know, it's owned by Qatari.
Yes.
And no one talks about that and the human rights implications. And yet there's been such a hoobery about it in relation to Man United.
Harrods, the Shard, Chelsea... Chelsea Barracks, I think it is, are owned by Qataris, part of Barclays Bank, part of Sainsbury's. Nobody talks about it, but then we apply different rules to football than we do to other areas of life. For example, Tottenham and Liverpool were criticised heavily for using the furlough scheme. Nobody batted an eyelid when Costa used it, even though Costa's a big business, whereas football clubs tend to be medium-sized businesses. Right. So, yeah, it's different. So, football's more emotive, that's what it is. And a lot of the time we don't even hear. I mean, it would be news to some people that Qatari have influence in some of the companies we just mentioned there.
Well, yes, it would. Let's have a look at AJ.
Oh,
Your man is back.
He is.
With Anthony Joshua.
He needs a knockout. He needs a statement victory, a showreel victory, as Gareth A. Davis might put it. He can't just hide behind his jab. Now, they're putting him up against a smaller opponent because that's who he's struggled against in the past. He struggles when he hasn't got a target. So when he's up against Alexander Usyk, for example, he just couldn't hit the guy. The guy was too skilled for him, too nimble. And so he lost the fight comfortably. Andy Ruiz in that first fight, yes, he got hit early on. He got hit over the top of the head. And he beat him in the second fight by hiding behind his jab to regain his title. Now, there's no title to gain this time. I admire him in a way because, look, he's got £300 million in the bank. He hasn't got much to prove. He's been heavyweight champion multiple times. He could just walk away. But he's gone to Texas this time. He's done the old Rocky IV, get the axe out and start hacking against some tree trunks. And I think that, you know, tomorrow he's not fighting against a real caliber opponent. This is somebody who is akin to the level he was fighting 4 or 5 years. Yeah, so that's the kind of level of fighter that he was up against when Matchroom were kind of introducing him and keeping him protected before he fought the likes of Klitschko and Usyk, etc. So, but I think he'll get the statement win. He thinks he'll do it in the 10th, but even if he does it in the 10th, I'm not convinced that'll cut it with a lot of their fans. But he's got something to prove. He looks leaner. He looks sharp. He's been doing interviews throughout the week, and there's a little bit of an edge to him, and I haven't seen that in AJ in quite some time. Yeah. I think it was a chastening experience when he got beaten twice by Usyk. I really do.
Oh, well, fingers crossed for him. Aidan, thank you.
Cheers.
Right, let's turn our attention to all things showbiz now. Stephanie Tecci is joining us in the studio.
Good morning.
Good morning to you, Stephanie. You're joining us, are you, for this next segment, or are we talking a bit about Gwyneth Paltrow?
Talking about Gwyneth.
Let's start with Gwyneth.
Well, obviously, Gwyneth finally feels she's been vindicated after 7 years with this hit and run ski crash. It was quite... it's been quite out there, you know, for the whole world to see this court case for her. For Gwyneth, it wasn't about the money, because all she was counter-suing him for was $1 American. For her, it was about keeping her reputation and making a statement on how celebrities can actually be exploited in such cases. Because you have to think, if it wasn't a celebrity involved with this, would Terry Sanderson have taken this to court? He now has to face potentially paying out hundreds of thousands of dollars to cover her attorney fees.
Yeah, it's ouch. It's gonna sting. But it was a weird case.
It was a very weird case, and there was like so many accusations, because the main thing people were trying to find out was who was the uphill skier, because whoever's downhill has more right of way. But there was a lot of outrageous claims from, you know, Terry Sanderson liking Gwyneth to Jeffrey Epstein, calling her Godzilla. She then said she felt like she had been sexually assaulted, which I think we've got a clip of.
Yeah, let's have a listen to that.
I was skiing and two skis came between my skis, forcing my legs apart, and then there was a body pressing against me, and there was a very strange grunting noise. So my brain was trying to make sense of what was happening. I thought...
I mean, quite what you would... your brain making sense of that. Most of us wouldn't know what on earth was going on, would you? Try and work it out once you've hit the ground.
And it sounded like it all happened pretty quickly. But for her, you know, she's got a well-being brand, so if she did lose this case, it would have done a lot of damage to her reputation.
I think it's fair to say that neither of them came out really smelling of roses. I think they both came across as being, at times, quite petty.
I agree.
She could have made this all go away.
Yeah.
She chose to go and fight this.
Yeah.
You know, maybe she's been vindicated with the verdict and everything. But you know, she was decent about it. As she walked out,
she wished him well. And to be honest as well, you are right. I think a lot of people are saying this has been probably Gwyneth's best role to date, because she definitely did play up for the cameras, whether it was her fashion or trying to bribe the jury with treats and stuff like that. So, you know, there's no Hollywood without a bit of courtroom scandals.
No, there isn't. And I'll tell you what, I'll tell you what else has caught my eye. There's Friends, because we all love a bit of Friends, don't we?
We
and it's
do.
one of those shows that, I mean, heck, how many years has it been? But it's still permanently on loop, isn't it, on all the channels? It's always there.
No.
It's always there. But Jennifer Aniston's come out and said something quite interesting.
Yeah, she has, because, you know, we're quite big on cancel culture at the moment, especially when it comes to comedy. And she says that a whole new generation of, you know, people who are watching Friends would probably find it offensive if they're watching it to, like, younger audiences. She said, you know, between the 90s and the early 00s, like, comedy was much more freer, less restrictive, and she says that now she feels if people watch it, people will be offended by some of the material that was featured in Friends. And I personally don't think you can go no wrong with Friends. I think there's always a bit of entertainment for everybody. But it was only last year the co-creator, Martha Kaufman, she actually came out and apologised because she said she felt like the show had a lack of diversity because it didn't feature any black or Asian characters, which I think she made it into a thing because it's never been criticised for that. And she actually donated, I think, about $4 million to African and American studies. But it's a shame that, you know, you can't just leave shows like that to be what it was. And, you know, obviously the climate's changed now for TV and comedy. So it's quite interesting she came out with that.
We were all big Friends fans. Were you a Neighbours fan?
I was a big Neighbours fan.
Were you a Neighbours fan?
You just,
me too.
You just have to be. You just have to be. And one of the people who, obviously, we saw for decades, I mean, just was always there, was Dr. Carl Kennedy, of course. And when Neighbours was all coming to an end, Carl Kennedy himself, Alan Fletcher, came on the show. We had a really good chat with him.
Really exciting, wasn't it?
It was a lovely thing to do. But anyway, he's back. Alan Fletcher is back because he's going to talk to us. I think, Alan, have we got you this morning? We're just sorting out his picture. We've got him. Hi, Alan. Good to see you.
Good morning.
Now, I know last time you were on, you talked about your music. But now this is something, even though the show's coming back, this is something you're really pushing now, isn't it? And you're going on tour.
Well, indeed, I'm on tour. I'm on the road right now. I'm up in North Yorkshire. I'm in Settle, actually, in beautiful, beautiful part of the world. Just performed at the oldest music hall, surviving music hall in the world. It was a wonderful night last night. And I'm touring everywhere. I'm off to Newcastle tonight and then right across Scotland, down to Worcester and Leamington Spa and so forth. Wonderful, wonderful tour. So, yes, and then heading straight home, incredibly, to start working on Neighbours again.
Well, I tell you what, I'm glad to see you dressing like a local. The Yorkshire viewers and listeners this morning will be thrilled to see you in your flat cap. You're looking the part. But look, for anyone like the three of us, I mean, we all watched avidly growing up. We were used to seeing Dr. Kennedy strumming on the guitar. And this love of music, presumably, has been something that's been with you throughout your career.
It has. My beautiful mother bought me a guitar when I was 14 years old, and it's always been by my side, and I've always written songs and so forth. Of course, Carl Kennedy's music is a little bit rough, let's put it that way. The residents of Ramsay Street don't like to listen to Carl sing. I actually love that comedy aspect of Carl Kennedy, that as a musician, he's considered to be a bit ordinary. But in my own life, of course, I've performed in rock bands, and now I'm performing Americana country music and touring the world doing that, which is just a joy for me.
Wow. So, I mean, the new album is the point, and that's obviously the tracks that you're touring with now. Why is it that you've now got this real desire to go into the Americana field?
Well, I've always been a person who writes about my life and how I feel about the world and so forth. But a lot of those songs have sat there literally in the vault. They've been on the computer untouched. And luckily, I met two of Australia's great Americana producers of music, Lachlan Bryan and Damien Caffarella, who invited me to come to the studio and show my songs to them, and they said, "Hey, Alan, these are good. These are really good. Let's start recording. Let's start polishing them." That was about 2 years ago now, and here this album is finally the fruition of that.
Well, Alan, last time we spoke to you, sorry, Steph,
no
you wanted
worries.
to come in.
No,
I'll come back and chuck a question in.
Alan, I just wanted to find out, how do you find it, like, juggling between the music world and then the TV world with soaps with Neighbours?
Oh, yeah, great question. The juggle's not too hard, Steph, because Neighbours is very accommodating, firstly, I have to say, and we don't film the entire year round. So I actually have considerable blocks of time that I have off. So I can actually plan to do my music around Neighbours. And so it's a wonderful mix. I mean, to be able to work on such a fantastic show like Neighbours that is so loved all around the world and incorporate my music is a joy.
Oh, we can see Susan there, embracing Susan, your on-screen wife.
I tell you what, do you ever get bored of it? Because people must call you Carl all the time.
They do. I answer to Carl. It's a bit sad, really, when you think about it. But I would never get bored with it, but to be frank, because my character has changed so much. Going to work every day to perform the same character would be boring if you were doing the same thing. But my character has evolved so much over the years. He started off as a very stern and brusque man who, basically was trying to do the best for a family of young children. Now, of course, all those children are grown up, and he's a completely different person from where he started. So the variety is wonderful. I do get to do a lot of comedy, I have to say, which is my passion.
Yeah, you had that illicit affair, didn't you, at one point? All the scandal around that. We watched it all, don't worry.
Look, I've got to ask you, Alan, I'd love to come and see you on tour. I don't know if you're going to be heading around my area. I shall check out your website to have a look. But I tell you what I'd love to see, just from a personal point of view, would you ever do a duet with John Farnham? I love John Farnham.
I would. John, sadly, is very unwell at the moment. I mean, he has some cancer was detected in his mouth and throat. So at the moment, we're all hanging with a lot of prayers, I have to say, that John's health improves rapidly. But sadly, I mean, to do a duet with John Farnham, of course, would be the absolute pinnacle of anybody's career. But, Carl Kennedy would do a duet with anybody. So anyone who's offering, he'll do a duet.
Love it.
Oh, they'll be queued up. Alan, it's always a joy to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed.
Yeah, thanks to Alan. Thank
Oh,
you to you as
no
well,
worries.
Steph.
I'm sorry to hear about John
It's making
Farnham.
a comeback, though, Neighbours.
I know.
The shock of it going away.
Filming's gonna start on April 17th.
Oh, he's not got long, then. He's straight back into
Insane.
it.
Who
Well, look,
knows?
thank you for your company today. I'm back with you tomorrow morning. I'm not sure who with yet, but we'll find out in the morning. See you at 6.
Bye-bye.
Hello there, welcome to your latest weather update from the Metaverse. I'm Jonathan Vaughtry. It is certainly a windy start to Friday for southern coast of England and Wales. That's due to low pressure that has been tracking its way through overnight, and this squeeze in the isobars here is really providing gales severe for a time. We could see gusts of 60, maybe up to 70 miles per hour through this early part of the morning. But underneath the main low pressure centre, winds are much lighter across many other areas of the UK. This is being accompanied by rain, certainly some persistent rain across areas of the southwest, particularly Devon and Cornwall, 15 to 25 millimetres building up, and there is a rain warning in force. Other areas of showery rain and drizzle persisting in many other locations, particularly across eastern coastal areas, as we see cloud pushing its way in from the North Sea. And where that cloud really persists, we could see some sea fog and temperatures not climbing much higher than 9 degrees Celsius. But a little brighter for western Scotland, and that's where we could see temperatures climb to around 15 degrees in Oban. As we move throughout to the overnight period, there's this trailing band of rain that's going to be persistent across, again, southwestern areas of England.